Hi, my name is Beth Payne, and I'm a third grade teacher at Lake Elmo. And I've been asked to talk to you a little bit about my coaching session this year. To start with, I have to say, when Lisa Blake, our instructional coach, came to me and asked me what topic or what I wanted to do for my coaching session, I really had no idea. And I had to take a little bit of time to think about what would really benefit me and my teaching. And what I discovered is that when I looked across my classroom, I have a very diverse group of students, and I felt like I knew very little about their culture. And so I went to Lisa and asked, is that something that I can actually do for coaching? Can I work on trying to see every student through their cultural lens instead of my own? And she kind of got excited and said, "Yeah, I think that's a great idea. It's not something I've ever done before, but I think it's something that we could work on together." And but I think it's something.
Exactly. Test that. The mics are live now. We'll be live before we get live streaming, just so everybody knows once the streaming starts, mics are already on.
Oops. Okay. Do you want to make sure your clicker works? And then when you get to that, just let me know and then I'll. You do it. Yep.
Good to go.
So we'll begin the work session for Stillwater Area Public Schools, School Board, District 834. And we are going to be discussing QComp. So I will let Superintendent Lansfeld begin with that.
Hey, Chair Petrie and Board Directors, thank you for providing us this work session tonight. I am going to turn the time over to Dr. Cherry and Deb Van Cly to provide a QComp update. Thank you.
Yeah,
Okay.
Go ahead.
All right, thank you, Superintendent Lansfeld, Chair Petrie, and rest of the board for this opportunity to share our annual report in regards to QComp. Wanted to share with you that the purposes of our plan, QComp originally started, I believe, in 2005. We looked that up today. And the purpose is really around recruiting and retaining highly qualified teachers, encouraging our teachers to, undertake challenging assignments, and us supporting them in that to improve students' educational achievement. I've also included a couple links here to the Department of Education's guiding document and also the state statutes that are aligned with that. So just wanted to share that with you. I mean, when I live it every day, this is just kind of here, but for some of us that are newer, thought it was important to share that information.
And I'm just going to share a couple because there is so much lingo that we're talking about here. So QComp stands for Quality Compensation, and it's part of the Alternative Teacher Professional Pay System. This is an optional program that school districts can choose to participate in. We were very fortunate, and Deb will explain a little bit more about the history here in Stillwater, but not every school district in the state participates in this program. Stillwater has been participating. We were one of the last school districts to get into the program, and at this time, the program is closed to any future school districts to opt into the program. It has very limited funding that's attached to it, and so that's why school districts, if they wanted to add in at this time, they wouldn't be able to. But Stillwater does, and again, it's. The bottom line here with all of this, it's trying to develop our teachers so that they make an impact on student learning. It's all about increasing student learning and student achievement. Yeah, sorry.
No worries, thank you. We started in 2016, 2017. I was fortunate to start in this role in coordinating our program and implementing it based on what we decided it was going to look like. We just completed year 5 this past school year. And important to understand that it's a collaboration and a partnership between our SEA union and also our Stillwater District Administration. And then when we agree on that plan, it then has to go to the Department of Education for approval on what we're doing. And the other piece is we also have a QComp advisory board that consists of 4 SCEA members. And those members are appointed to the board through an election process, through our executive board of the SCEA. And then there are 3 administrative representatives, and those are appointed by our superintendent. There are 4 components to our QComp program, and every district that participates in QComp has these 4 components, but what they put under each component is really what is derived through the plan that they decide works best for Stillwater or their school district. So you're gonna see it's a little different from district to district, and this is how our leadership put together the plan for Stillwater schools. We have career ladder positions through our instructional coach, our mentors, my position, our professional development consultants, and our special ed site liaisons. Our instructional coaches and my position are full-time release positions that have term limits. The rest of the positions are stipended positions. Then we also have job-embedded professional development, and we'll dig into that a little bit more, but job-embedded PD, the difference between job-embedded PD and PD is that job-embedded PD occurs during the school day by trained teacher leaders. And for us, those are our mentors and our instructional coaches and myself. So we lean real heavily on those people to really do that job-embedded PD on a daily basis. We also then have our teacher development plan where our teachers set goals. Our administrators do a great job of working with the staff on setting those goals, and our instructional coaches in the buildings support that process. We have district goals, the building site goal, and then teachers set individual goals for themselves as well, based on a rubric in different areas of the rubric that supports them in learning that they would like to do. It also involves a peer review process where, for example, if I was partnered with Dr. Cherry, I would go in and give her feedback on her teaching in an area that she's trying to work on, and then she would be reciprocal and she would give me feedback. And then we have this reflective process where we work with one another and learn from each other and grow our practice. We also then have observation evaluations from our administrators that take place, and depending where you are in the evaluation process, they will come into your classroom 2 to 3 times a year. And then there's also reflection. We have in everything that we do when we build this process out, there's always a reflection on what did I do well, what do I want to do differently, what did I learn, how can I continue to grow after every process. So we really built that in there for that reflective practice. And then the performance pay is the 4th area. And we get paid with a school-wide achievement goal. So if teachers meet the building site goal, they get compensation. If they meet the individual student achievement goal, they get additional compensation. And then the completion of their TD&E is the last piece where they would get compensated. During the 2021 school year, we had 579 certified staff, and 93% of them met their individual student goal, and over 99% completed the TD&E pieces of it. So just wanted to give you an idea of what that looks like. When our leadership team had the beginning stages of developing what is QComp gonna look like in Stillwater schools, they really focused it on it being a teacher growth and teacher reflective practice, not an evaluated process. It's, that's part of it, but they wanted teachers to be reflective and to really think growth mindset. So how can we continue to improve our instructional practices, student learning, improving the trust between the partnership between the employees and administration, and providing that additional professional opportunity and compensation for their learning when they're setting their goals. I just think it's real important because we were very intentional that was growth minded. So we wanted to share with you a little bit some of the job-embedded PD. We have one of our elementary teachers that participated in a coaching cycle, and this particular person happens to have been taught for over 20 years. So I think it's a real testament to when they really participate in reflective practice, the growth that can occur for someone who's been teaching for 25 years. Do I push it or does Joan? Sorry.
Joan, can you play the video for us?
Do I need to click the link?
Yeah, go to the next. Or I can.
Whoops,
Oh.
no,
That was right. Okay.
yep, there we go.
Hi, my name is Beth Payne, and I'm a third grade teacher at Lake Elmo. And I've been asked to talk to you a little bit about my coaching session this year. To start with, I have to say when Lisa Blake, our instructional coach, came to me and asked me what topic or what I wanted to do for my coaching session, I really had no idea. And I had to take a little bit of time to think about what would really benefit me and my teaching. And what I discovered is that when I looked across my classroom, I have a very diverse group of students, and I felt like I knew very little about their culture. And so I went to Lisa and asked, is that something that I can actually do for coaching? Can I work on trying to see every student through their cultural lens instead of my own? And she kind of got excited and said, yeah, I think that's a great idea. It's not something I've ever done before, but I think it's something that we could work on together. And so we did. We started by looking at the Somali culture. And Lisa found articles for both of us to read. And then we would get together the following week and share what we learned about that culture. We continued to do that each week as we came up with a different topic and then had our discussion the following week. And it was something that I really ended up looking forward to. I had gotten a book over the summer called This Book is Anti-Racist by Tiffany Jewell, and it was something that I wanted to read, but I hadn't pushed myself to find the time to read. So I brought that to Lisa and I said, is this now something that we can add to my coaching? Because I think it really will help me to be able to learn more about myself and also to learn more about my students and what I could maybe bring to being able to see them and be more culturally responsive in my teaching. And so we started reading that book together, and we would read a few chapters, and in this book there happened to be activities to do, and that led to our discussion. But the first thing that we did is that we created an identity statement, and Lisa shared hers with me first, and through that sharing I learned so much about her, and I saw her being vulnerable in sharing so much about herself that when I shared my own statement, I was able to also add things or tell her about things that were very personal, but that shaped who I am today, the person that I am. And so that was a really important activity. And I realized in this coaching that doing that identity statement was the first thing that I really needed to do in order to be able to see my students. I had to be able to see myself and my culture in order to be able to see their culture and try to see it through their eyes. So that was a really important activity that I did. Through my coaching, I think some things that I was surprised by was actually how close Lisa and I became. She became not only my coach, a mentor, a confidant, but a friend. And starting this whole coaching cycle, that wasn't something I anticipated. Another thing I was surprised by was that my coaching, even though it's over, I am continually looking to try to find more ways to be anti-racist, to learn more about the culture of the students in my class, and I'm constantly seeking out Lisa and wanting to share what I've learned, even though our session is over. Also with our coaching, this was a little bit different because even though Lisa was the coach, we were learning about a topic that neither one of us was an expert at. So I felt like there was some give and take between what I was able to bring to the table and what she was sharing as well. So I loved the coaching in that respect because it was broader than just Lisa as the teacher, as the coach, and me more as a student. We went through this process together, and that was another thing that I really enjoyed about our coaching session. So I think that as you start your coaching, what I would suggest for you is to find something that you're interested in, that will be helpful in making you a better teacher and helpful in being able to be something that maybe you've wanted to pursue but just haven't taken the time. And work with your coach. Lean into your coach for their teaching. Lisa prepared and found all of the materials that we needed in order for our coaching to be successful. I only had to take the time to read and discuss what she provided for me. And I have to say that I'm still learning, and that the coaching session really changed me and in opening my eyes to see my class and trying to be more open to the diversity that is in my class and the cultural differences in my class. And so I hope that whatever coaching session you take part in, that you're able to find joy in learning a lot about yourself and bringing that into your classroom to improve your teaching. Thank you.
I think what's exciting for me with that is that learning spread to her other grade level teammates, which then spread to more learning. And that vulnerability piece, that's really difficult for even myself as an adult to really break down those walls and have that relationship, to have that difficult conversation where we really have that comfort level where we're at. But what are we gonna do to stretch ourselves, which is then gonna impact our students in such a positive way. So I just think it was just a great narrative on that piece. And you know, this job embedded PD took place before the school day started, after the school day started, and in between other places too. They found a way to make it work. And that's the beauty of what our instructional coaches do, is the reflective practice questions that they're willing to work with teachers on, and building that schedule so teachers show up and they have that piece. I wanted to share the other side of it from one of our instructional coaches who next year will be moving back to the classroom. And she shared this reflection that I thought was really powerful. I used to think, now I think, a reflection on 7 years as an instructional coach, and this is with Andrea Schuler, who's was our instructional coach at the high school. I used to think that being a good teacher was the most important step to being a good coach. Now I think there is so much more. Listening comes first. I used to think I became a coach once I was hired into the role. Now I think that I gradually became a coach across all 7 years in this role as I learned to listen, ask questions, and honor each person I worked with. I used to think some teaching roles were harder or more work than others. Now I think that each content or teaching role has its challenging aspects that those who aren't teachers of that content can't appreciate and oftentimes don't even see. I used to think people were hesitant about having other people come into their classroom. Now I think that's just a story we tell ourselves, because everyone has always welcomed me into their classroom. I used to think coaching should be optional. Now I think everyone deserves a coach. So it's nice to hear both sides of that story on that narrative. So every year, we gather feedback from our SCA members. This spring, we had about 52% of our members that responded. And just wanted to note that last year we did not do one due to COVID. So this year's survey kind of combines some of the feedback from last year and this year, so it's kind of a consolidation of the two. But the one thing I also did was, being it was the very first year of implementing our one-to-one mentors, I set up opportunities for our mentors to connect with me via Zoom for 15-minute just connect points, and had about 60% of our mentors participate that, and just had a conversation with them one-on-one to gather some perspective from them as well. So wanted to highlight our mentor program a little bit, being it was the first year that we implemented the one-to-one. I'll be honest, when we were gonna implement it during the pandemic, I'm like, really? Is that really the right thing to do? But I'm a risk taker. I felt it was a healthy risk. We did it. And overall, the feedback from both our new staff and our mentors was very, very positive. I mean, if there was any time I needed more support, it was during a pandemic. So they really appreciated that. Just to give you a little bit of an overview of what the mentor program looked like this year, is that we met with our new staff during new teacher workshop week, and one afternoon we partnered our mentors with the new staff, and they had that afternoon to work with each other, kind of look through their buildings, depending where they're at, we look through curriculum and a variety of different things. We also met with the new staff 3 times virtually throughout the school year for about a 90-minute session, and worked with our instructional coaches to develop that learning alongside them. Met with the mentors twice during the school year virtually to just kind of get some feedback. And then we also had mid-year check-ins with a Google form where it was short and sweet with just basic questions, you know, what's working, what's not working, what other supports do you need, and had that information from them as well. So I think you can see from what they're saying is that it was the right thing to do, and it was a good thing for us to get started. This is just a snapshot of what our mentors do with new staff. We ask them to meet with new staff biweekly, so at least twice a month, starting on early. But the one variable there is that, you know, for a new teacher that's brand new out of college, they might need a mentor to meet with them daily, you know, right, as they're learning the ropes. And then we have new staff that we hire that has 15 years of experience, so it just looks different, right? And we really try to honor people where they're at in their professional journey as to what we do. We had 65 mentors this past school year. We average about 50 new staff over the last 3 years. So you can see from here that, you know, what are some of the conversations about? It's about a learning environment, classroom management. The other piece that is alongside here is our instructional coaches work alongside this to help our mentors through conversations, and also new staff with some of these things as well, because they have that full-time release, which is really, really helpful. What are we doing well? We know that teachers are doing well with meeting their individual student achievement goals. The one-to-one mentor for new staff was a good thing to have. The job-embedded PD with our coaches, and continue to build systems of collegial support. I think you heard that very strongly through Beth's message, that the collegial piece was really, really important for her. And we offer these probationary learning visits and the peer review process where we take our teachers through a training and we visit other teachers in the classroom to see what best practice looks like, so that they have an idea, when I'm doing a literacy piece, what does that look like? When I'm doing an instructional strategy of philosophical chairs, I can go into classroom, watch a teacher model it, and then have support from the instructional coach when I go back to my classroom to help me through that process. So we're continuing to build that system throughout the school day. Where can we grow? Again, just creating systems for that job-embedded PD is really, really important. How we continue to grow the mentor instructional coaches into that process. Very fortunate that for our probationary teachers that they will continue to have a mentor in year 2 and year 3. We weren't sure our budget was going to support that, but I'm happy to announce that we're going to be able to do that. And then we want to continue to provide meeting for our special education staff, our specialists, non-classroom staff. It's about 35% of our teachers fit into this role. So when we have job-embedded PD, when we have professional development days, we need to be intentional about how we're going to connect them to the learning that we're doing with them as well. We also know that through a survey we did with our SEA members, that of the members that participated, 80% said they want more job-embedded PD. So there's a real buy-in from our members on that piece. What will our focus be for 21-22? Continue to meet with stakeholders, you know, our teachers, our administrators, our district level administration, to continue to improve the TDEP process, create meaningful job-embedded PD, and just that timely feedback, right? So that's where the probationary learning visits and peer review really able to provide that timely feedback so I can reflect on my practice and make those adjustments. Continuing to improve our mentor program and also our development of our special ed site liaisons. Challenges. So we've talked a lot about job-embedded PD, and I want to go a little bit deeper into that piece of it. Job embedded PD is really developmental, meeting teachers where they're at. We talked about the teacher that has 2 years of experience, the teacher that has 25 years of experience. How do we meet them where they're at with that piece? How do we offer frequent and sustained professional learning with the goals that they're seeking to do? Incorporating impact cycles where I put an instructional strategy into place, I collect some data on that, it informs my thinking, and how do I adjust, right? How do I adjust to meet the needs of my students with those pieces? Incorporating that coaching cycle where I have that reflective conversation with an instructional coach as I'm doing that. I'm pretty sure if I look back on Beth and Lisa had about 25 hours of job embedded PD where they were really intentional about those pieces. How do we use the data to inform our thinking? And it's important that, again, the stakeholders are not only to inform the thinking of our teachers, but also to inform the thinking of our students that are in that place, right? How are they buying in? How are they assessing where they're at with their engagement during that process? And then always rooted in brain research and evidence, and that the best theory is an adult learning theory. So that's that really job embedded piece. So knowing that our instructional coaches, we had a reduction in our instructional coaches this year at the elementary level, that's going to be a challenge for us. How are we going to continue to meet those within our buildings? The daily schedule, finding that time, prep time. I just look at like when I was a specialist at the elementary level, when you've got kids back to back to back, you can't even find time in the day to, use the restroom if you need to. So how do we, continue to work with that daily schedule for that collaborative time? The fact that our professional development budget has been taking cuts for the last 3 years also impacts, the time that our teachers have for their professional learning. And then just our number of limited days that we have 4 days of professional development throughout the school year. That makes it a challenge as well. So what can we continue to do to, really build that time into the day and build systems to support teachers with that learning and moving from, when I sit and I learn, now I go into the classroom and I want to apply it and how it's going to work with my kids and my students. So. Do you want to talk to this one, the budget?
Yeah, I'll take the budget. Thanks, Deb. Again, a QComp program is meant to be a shared program in terms of not just the responsibility of who does what, but also the funding behind it. So currently, we do receive state funds that runs our program. We have a QComp coordinator, that's Deb's position. We have instructional coaches, and in our district, 4.5 FTE of our instructional coaches come out of our QComp budget. This is projected for next year. There was a reduction in this. Our QComp budget, the funding that comes from the state, it's dependent upon the enrollment. So when our enrollment went down this year, we received a lower amount of funding. And so that really was the impetus for the reduction in the instructional coaches. As you can see, it's also one of the more expensive pieces of our budget. And so we do have an instructional coach part-time at each of our elementary schools, a full-time coach at our largest elementary school at Lake Elmo Elementary, which is almost equivalent to Stillwater Middle, pretty close in terms of students. We have a full-time instructional coach at each of our middle schools. And then we were able to make some adjustments for next year, and so now we're looking at a 1.5 FTE at the high school. That's all proportional to the number of teachers in each one of those schools. So you can see that we have more instructional coaches than is actually funded out of our QComp budget, but the other portion of that is paid for with our general fund. And John can talk more about that, and I know QComp's on the agenda this evening for the business meeting, but for a projected budget for next year for QComp, the big portion of that is funding our instructional coaches. We also fund other stipends for our teaching staff. We have site PD consultants, so we have one teacher leader from each one of our school sites that sits on our professional development team, a committee that helps plan for that each year. We have special ed consultants, and they, as Deb had mentioned earlier, they receive a small stipend for serving in that capacity. And then our mentorship program, our mentors receive $500 for the mentorship that they provide to our mentees. And then it's the pay for performance piece. And I think we get a lot of questions about this piece of it because it is called quality compensation. And so most people think that this is really what QComp is all about. But again, that pay for performance all ties back to the goals. And have they set up their goals? Are they meeting their goals? And so each teacher receives stipends for meeting their goals. And this changes from year to year depending on, again, what does the budget look like and how has the QComp board decided to spend these funds. And an interesting piece about this one is when we had to set our budget this year, there was a survey that went out to the teachers because we knew we had to reduce the budget. And there was a considerable level of support for increasing or maintaining as many instructional coaches as possible. And the teachers were actually willing to give up a portion of their pay for performance piece of it. And so right now, looking at next year, a teacher can earn up to $1,000. There's different portions for each portion of that, but up to $1,000. That is pretty minimal if we look at most of our peer districts. Their QComp programs in other districts, it's right around $2,000 or a little bit more in each of the districts. So our teachers are getting about half of what would be comparable in other districts. The last piece of our budget goes to additional resources and training, resources for our mentorship program, other training that's required for all of these programs, and other types of resources and expenditures. So in total, the state funding that we receive is $1.4 million. And again, that fluctuates year to year depending on enrollment. And that pay for performance is the other part of the budget that flexes each year depending on the number of certified staff that we have. So if we have more certified staff, that number, that expenditure will go up. So we're looking at about 1.4 is our budget, and I know we get a lot of questions about that, so we wanted to make sure we provided that piece of information. Did I miss anything, Deb, on budget?
No. Okay. Good. Then we just have, do you have any questions?
Thank you for that presentation. That was a lot of really good information. Liz?
Thank you. Sorry. Thank you very much. Could you repeat one of the things that you said just now, Dr. Cherry, that our teachers are getting half of what? What was the?
Oh, the pay for performance piece. That's a decision that's made by the QComp board as to how they have to agree on a budget and balance their budget each year. Our pay for performance in sum total right now, each teacher can earn up to $1,000 in additional stipends for meeting their goals, completing TDEP. In other districts that have QComp programs, on average, those districts, their pay for performance piece of it is around $2,000, a little bit more than that in other districts.
And then how long has QComp been paying for instructional coaches out of their budget?
For 5 years, right?
Yeah, they've paid for different numbers of FTEs for instructional coaches since the beginning.
Okay. And so what is the number that comes out of the general fund for instructional? Not the money number, but the number of coaches.
Yeah, so we have 2.0 that will, I'm sorry, 3.0, why did I just get that wrong? 3.0, that will be funded out of the general fund, and it comes out of some professional development carryover that we have for next year. But that, again, is an item that flexes from year to year. In previous years, we've had other funding sources to pay for instructional coaches. Through the years, what's come out of the QComp budget has also gone up and down, so that flexes.
Thank you. I have some more, but
Okay, thank you. Allison?
I was just going to ask for maybe people who don't know, can you talk a little bit about the QComp board's role? Like how the process works in terms of how a plan is developed, your role, and then how you work with the QComp board and who else works with them?
So my role is completely an advisory role. So I bring information to them, you know, it might be the budget, it might be ways we can spend things in the budget, an update on how things are going. So that's my role. The voting members are the 4 SE members and the 3 advisory, administrative members. And they're the ones that bring the votes to the table to make decisions on, you know, if there's a change to the plan, if we're gonna do the budget differently, those types of pieces.
And just, sorry, one follow-up to that. In other districts, is QComp always composed of administrators, teachers? Does any other district do that differently, or is that just kind of, do we do it kind of similarly to, does every district do this?
It's very similar, yeah. Yep.
Katie?
Thank you, Chair Petrie. First of all, thank you for this presentation. It was really helpful to kind of see what all goes into QComp. And there's a whole lot. I guess what I'm most impressed about is the mentor program and bringing on new teachers and having a support system for onboarding, and it's embedded beyond PD. I remember just from my own educational background, those PD days, they go quick, and it's really easy to forget what you learned there. So to have that kind of constant connection with staff and support, excuse me, I feel like that's a really important piece to building a really strong staff. So I appreciate that, and I do have a question. You mentioned the teacher development evaluation plan on one of the slides, and I was just curious, does that tie into licensure for teachers at all? Is that part of, can people use their plans to get credits, or is there a licensure component to QComp at all? I guess that's kind of my question.
We offer them CEUs or continuing education units as part of that. So like when they're doing their peer review, anything around professional learning, they can, you know, they complete the process, we have them reflect on it, and then they earn CEUs towards relicensure. Yep.
Okay.
And then, so for example, in Beth's case, when I heard about what she was doing, I coordinated with Eric Anderson to say, hey, tell me more about, does this meet any of our cultural competencies, which is a mandatory relicensure area, and then we work together to help it meet, you know, areas in there that would work. So we really try to support teachers in that process as well with all of this.
Great, thank you.
I just wanted to follow up with a question on the mentoring, because I also was, really pleased to hear about that. I am wondering who you pair the new teachers with. Are these established teachers who are sort of at the top of their career? How would you describe those mentors?
So we have certain qualifications that a teacher needs to meet in order to apply to be a mentor. So they have to apply first, but they also have to have 4 years of teaching experience. They cannot be on a teacher improvement plan. And then there are other pieces from leadership qualities that we ask them to participate to. We also work closely with administrators to determine who people are going to be. In year one, this is kind of how it fell, was that at the elementary level, grade level, we really tried to find somebody at the grade levels to support them. So a first grade teacher, the first grade teacher. Music, a music teacher with a music teacher. The part that gets complex about that is that because they're the only music teacher in the building, each building has their own institutional, what works there. So that gets a little complicated. So we're going to try to work next year to kind of think about that a little bit. Can we do something to have a building mentor for some of our specialists, and then also a content area? Secondary is much more content area aligned, where a science teacher with a science teacher, math with math, but we try to keep them in their buildings as well. There are a few cases where we had to go across buildings because, for example, one of the science grade levels, there was two brand new teachers at one of our middle schools. So we try to coordinate with the middle school teachers at the, with that grade level. And I think overall it was good. We had a few hiccups, but again, year one, we can make those changes and implement those for year two.
Okay, thank you. Annie?
Hi, thank you, Chair Petrie. Deb, thanks for the presentation. I mean, it's a great program. My quick question here is, how do you measure success, both for teachers and students?
As far as when they meet their individual student goals, so that's how we measure the success piece. We also do, with the survey, we ask the teachers to do a self-reflection and evaluation on how did the peer review process support you in meeting your professional goal? How did, you setting your goals help you? And in some cases, we found out the teachers like, the process isn't working for me. So now we know then next year, what are some changes we can make in collaboration with administrators to help them in that process, which is, one of the things we talked about was we need to support our special ed teachers more. We need to support some of those other specialists more in those areas. So that's one thing that we do. Is there anything else you want to add?
That's exactly what I was going to say. I was just going to answer, the part that you talked about. How do we measure the student achievement piece of this, or the tie to student achievement? All goes back to that piece that's tied to performance pay and goal setting. So part of that is the student achievement goal. It's related to this teacher's individual goal is related to student achievement. And so the teacher sets that individual goal, but it's really dependent upon, are they making progress? Are they actually meeting the mark? And so all of the pieces of the compensation part of it ties back to, are we meeting our goals?
Right, so how does that translate to the students? How do you see the application of those goals? Because the students, the growth of the students with respect to the teacher's achievement is a reflection of the teacher's success. Mm-hmm. So how do you measure the student part of it in relation to the teacher's performance?
I would say when I've worked with teachers through this process, at the beginning of the year, we're looking at all of the preliminary data coming in. We sit down and the teachers take a lot of time and thought and reflection into setting those goals. And a lot of those goals are based upon student assessments. And they'll take assessments beginning of the year, middle of the year, end of the year, and they look at that student growth to see if they've met their goal. But they're very careful after they get to know their class and what their needs are to set those goals.
Thank you.
Allison?
I was struck, there was a Lake Elmo teacher, Miss Payne, who was talking about her goal, and that she kind of looked at her class and and identified what she wanted her goal to be. I have kind of two questions related to that. Is there ever a goal that a teacher is encouraged to have by someone in the building, like a principal or an instructional coach? Is there any guidance that's given if maybe, hey, this is an opportunity? And then my second question is, that was an example, and I could see that in, like, it's a very diverse building. It's our most diverse, and so that goal would be very specific to her class. But what are some examples of some other goals that teachers have selected? I don't know. I mean, I don't even know what it'd be. Just other examples.
So they will use at the elementary a fast bridge score, or MCA, or MAP. At the middle schools, at the high school, they'll use MCAs, ACTs. They'll also use summative assessments. If it's a special education student, they might be using IEP goals as part of those pieces. So it's a variety of different things, and it's really specific to what the teacher wants to work on. And at the beginning of the year, we have a district goal in which then we work with building site goals. And some of our teachers align their individual goal to match both the building goal and so it's like, it's all just aligned. So they're not having to piece together 3 different things and work on 3 different things. So they really try to weave it in and interconnect everything.
So just to follow up, does it ever get real specific, like maybe a teacher says, I want to have my goal be learning more about literacy or math, or I'm struggling in a certain, I mean, does it drill down to as deep as like this individual concept, or I'm noticing this, or?
So like Superintendent Lansfeld talked about, so in the fall, 70% of my students scored in the certain percentile. By spring, this percentage of my students are gonna score in this percentile. So it's very, very specific with percentages and where they're moving towards.
Okay. And then just my first question, sorry, I shouldn't have asked you, I guess, but are they ever guided towards, do you use those and like, does someone say, hey, maybe if they come in, they say, I really want to do this, but a principal maybe thinks, oh, I think this might be a better, I mean, is there ever a collaboration between the teacher and the administration to kind of stretch that?
Absolutely. Our administrators meet with all of our teachers to work with their goals, especially if teachers are probationary or in year 3 of tenure with their summative evaluation. They have a pre-conference, they look at the goal, they talk about the goal, they talk about what's your plan for the year and how can we work together to strengthen that piece. Yep, absolutely.
Thank you.
Katie, did you have a question?
Yes, Allison actually asked very similar questions to what I have, but one kind of small tag off. Are there any, like, it sounds a lot like the teachers are really looking down at the students and the testing. Is there ever maybe part of the administration piece to look up at like the district goals, like world's best workforce, kind of strategic goals? Like how does that kind of fit into, or is it taken into account in these teacher goals and what they're trying to achieve?
Yeah, absolutely. It's the top down and a bottom up, right? You know, I don't know, Mark, if you want to speak to it a little bit too, because I'm putting you on the spot, but you know, it's that constant collaboration amongst everybody on how this is all going to work. And the bottom line is increasing student achievement, whether it be literacy, math, social emotional learning, any of those pieces.
There's a couple different goals that they set. There's a site goal that we have, which aligns each building to the world's best workforce around that. And then there's a teacher individual student data goal. So there's a building goal that they're working towards as well as an individual teacher goal that they're doing. So it's an overall site goal as well as an individual teacher that kind of meet both ends, that kind of look at the world's best workforce, but then also what are some individual things that my kids need in my specific year in my classroom.
Great, thank you.
Liz?
Thank you. Back to the budget part of it, if the budget is 1.4 million, and I think what we're asking, or what we're being asked is to do a non-voter approved levy for about 800. So 600,000 is what comes from the state depending on enrollment approximately.
Nope, that 1.4 all comes from the state.
Okay, so then to do the non-voter approved levy of 800, so would then this increase your budget?
It would increase the budget by whatever the board approved for that non-voter approved levy. I think John is going to share what the possibility is there, right?
It's approximately 800,000, but it depends on student enrollment because they're matched. It's $91 per student levy. That's what you can do. But if you, it's related to the aid too. If you reduce the amount that you take for aid, you also reduce the amount for that you can levy too.
Okay. And then is part of the goal to try to bring pay for performance up to what other districts are paying? Is that what some of the 800 is maybe going to go for?
No, actually, I'll just go back to this again. So the budget for a QComp program is mapped to the current plan that's in place. If the budget were to increase by that amount, which is very substantial, what would happen is this would go back to the QComp board for review, and the QComp board would really look at what do we want to, where would we recommend putting those additional funds? Would it be with more instructional coaches? Would it be with increasing our mentorship program? Could it potentially be with other types of resources or training that would help, again, with the teacher development? Or would it be in the pay for performance? So those are decisions that would have to go back to the board for review. And then just,
QComp board.
can I, yeah,
Yeah.
the QComp board, and then if we changed our plan, we would have to resubmit that. So let's say, the decision was we wanted to take all of that money, the $800,000, and we decided to add on to our plan or do something different, we would have to go back to MDE and get that approved.
So the 800,000, we would have no idea really where it was gonna go until the QCOM board decided that.
The QComp board would have to come back to this board, yes, for review. And just, kind of putting it out there again, the instructional coaches is an area right now where our general fund or professional development budget is actually funding a lot of those positions. And so that, that could be a place where it could help out with the general fund budget if that
And
was.
this is my last one.
Yep.
Are other districts able to pay more pay for performance because they don't also fund something as big as instructional coaches through QComp?
I think every district has some sort of peer evaluator, instructional coach.
Yeah, they have some sort of coach. Think about, the 4 areas that were earlier. So we can do career ladder positions with the funding, the job embedded PD, and that can come in a lot of different ways. So like, we currently have our TD&E process. We could add some pieces to that where there would be more of an impact cycle or action research component that if teachers wanted to take it deeper, they could earn, they meet that goal with compensation, whether it be with more coaches, mentors, there's a variety of different ways. Some school districts use professional learning community, the leads, PLC leads, they have a lead and they pay people for that and that planning, where a lot of job embedded PD takes place as well. So there's a variety of different ways that you can do it. So, the QComp board, along with input from the SCA members and the executive board and administrators, all those stakeholders would be a part of building that process.
Thank you.
Allison?
So one of my ideas, because I know the action item tonight isn't, getting this report is helpful for the background. Tonight, we're looking at voting to maintain that flexibility to kind of keep the ability to fund it. And John, you can we can't, if we don't do it tonight, we can't go back and add it later, but we can we can make a change down later.
You can always reduce, but you can't increase.
You can't reduce, you can't add. So, is it possible to, we always say this throughout, everyone can agree on this, that we always say that such an indicator of success for academic achievement for our students is putting a really good teacher in front of them. And this, to me, directly does that for our students. Would it be possible to really look at that $800,000 and kind of collaborate with the QComp board, with administration, with teachers, but also with the board to say, we want to make sure that that achievement is there, I think, I don't want to speak, I can only speak for myself. But I want to, I think it's important for me that that's focus on student achievement is always there. And, and perhaps we can at least see what you can come back with, what we can do for our students for this $800,000 and see if it's something that we can support later on down the line.
Absolutely, and actually we have a couple of QComp board members right here. I think they're both giving the nod. Absolutely, I think the QComp board would be ecstatic to bring a plan back to
Some ideas so we
this
can
Board
see.
of Education.
And then my
Yes.
last question, I just want to, because I've always heard this and it's been stated before, but since you do all the collaboration with our other peer districts, can you tell us and confirm for us, do we know of like our peer districts in the metro that are doing QComp but not doing the local levy dollars for it? Do we?
The only one I'm aware of is St. Paul.
Okay.
But I should tell you that I think as a board, my own opinion, you'd be disappointed if a lot of the things that are on that slide, no matter if you funded it or not, didn't happen. And I know that in a district that doesn't levy this, doesn't use Q-Comp at all, still performs some of those duties, but that money has to come from someplace. So it depends, it's where you want, how you want to pay for it. And your expectation, I assume, is to have this,
Yeah. Well, and
mentorship, et cetera.
And what would the timeline be if if the QComp board and we said, yep, we're gonna keep this open, we wanna see what you guys can do with this additional dollars, what can it do for students, and what's the time frame on that? Do you come back in a few months to the board, or how does that process work where we can kind of weigh in? No, not weigh in, but just see what your plan is to make that determination.
Our next meeting isn't until.
Right, so just so if I understand your question, we would have to bring you something before the decision would have to be made in December, right? So, we'd have work to do and we'd get on it and be able to bring it to you before then.
Okay, so we can see it.
And so just to clarify on that, I mean, the QComp board, I mean, when they bring it to us, we're not actually voting on it, correct? Because they are the ones that make the decision, and then they're just bringing it to us as a matter of a report. Is that correct?
That's my understanding.
Yes.
Okay, all right,
So we're making the funding
You
decision
make
at
the
that time.
funding decision.
Yep.
okay, great. Are there any other questions on this topic then? Oh, Tina.
I just have a statement, actually, going off of what Director Sherman has been saying. I have a little bit of a struggle asking the taxpayers to fund something that they don't have representation for. They are not represented in any of the decision-making of the QComp board. So that's kind of where I struggle a little bit between the SCA and administration. They really don't have a voice. So I don't feel that it's right that we, take a non-voter approved levy and do this without them being able to have representation.
Anyone else?
Katie.
Quick question on that. Would you be in favor of just dropping all of QComp altogether and just removing ourselves from the whole program then, since it
That's
is
not what I said.
taxpayer money? I'm just asking a follow-up question.
That's not what I said. Don't
Okay.
put words in my mouth, please.
I'm not trying to. I'm just asking a clarification. Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay, we'll finish up our work session now. We have a couple minutes before our board session starts at 6 o'clock. Thank you, everyone. Stillwater Area Public Schools School Board, District 834, for June 24th, 2021. Joan, can you call the roll, please?
Director Hocker?
Here.
Director Anken?
Here.
Director Porbeni?
Yep.
Director Riley?
Here.
Director Sherman?
Here.
Director Weisberg? Here. Chair Petrie?
Here.
You have quorum.
Thank you. We'll rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Director Riley, can you read the mission statement, please?
Yes, the mission of Stillwater Area Public Schools, in partnership with students, family, and community, is to develop curious individuals who are active and engaged leaders in an ever-changing world by challenging all students as they travel along their personalized learning pathways.
Thank you. Director Sherman, can you read the school board goals?
In partnership with community, parents, and students, the School Board of Stillwater Area Public Schools ensures excellence in education by increasing student achievement for all students, securing long-term financial stability of the district, increasing community trust and engagement.
Thank you. Next item is approval of the agenda. Can I get a motion to approve the agenda? Director Sherman, second by Director Porbeni. All those in favor of approving the agenda, please raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? Motion carries. The next item on our agenda is open forum. Those who wish to speak to the school board will be able to do so in the beginning of the board meeting during open forum. You must sign up to speak. You may sign up only for yourself, not other individuals or groups, and only in person. The sign-up sheet is made available at the Oak Park building 30 minutes prior and up to the start of the meeting. Due to time limitations, we will limit the number of speakers to 15 who may speak for 3 minutes each. If you spoke at the last meeting, please consider allowing others to sign up before you. When your name is called, please approach the podium and state your name and address, including town, before you begin your remarks. Please pay attention to the timer, who will hold up cards indicating when you are approaching the end of your time. When time is called, you may finish your sentence. After you address the board, please leave the podium. Stillwater Area Public Schools, District 834, welcomes input from citizens as community involvement on the issues facing our district fosters better decision-making and improved learning experiences for all students. While comments and questions are welcome during open forum, law prohibits the board from discussing concerns about individual employees or students in a public meeting. We will stop the proceedings immediately if employee or student privacy issues are raised and direct the speaker to forward comments regarding individual employees or students to the superintendent. We welcome discussion of the issues, but will not tolerate the targeting of individual staff or students by name, position, or implication. Because we are modeling civil discourse for our community, speakers must present their testimony in a respectful manner. Vulgarity, character attacks, or malice will not be tolerated. The board will not deliberate, discuss, or engage in conversation with speakers during open forum. However, the board may ask administration to review the concerns presented. So our first speaker tonight is Sandy Hayner. And just to mention that Director Hockert is going to be doing the timer cards tonight. So if you could just
Alrighty.
state your name and your address. Thank you.
My name is Sandy Hayner. I live in Stillwater, Minnesota. So I'm here to talk about the World's Best Workforce committee that I volunteered for, and I was placed on the Career and College Ready / graduation subcommittee. And so I'm going to present some information that was not presented to us, but I feel like is very important, and this is what I presented to our subcommittee. So this information is gathered from the Department of Ed, MnSCU, the local press, our Minnesota State Report Card, as well as just our Stillwater School District data. So when it comes to our high school MCAs, 47% of our high schoolers are not proficient in math. 27% are not proficient in reading, 27 are not proficient in reading, 25 not proficient in science. So
when you then talk to MinSCU, right, they have some numbers as far as what are the remediation courses that high schoolers are taking. And they sort of match up exactly with our MCA scores. So 50% of the courses that are remediation courses are math, 25% are in reading, and another 25% are reading and study skills. And the study skills part I thought was interesting because the high school says that their grading is basically 80% tests and 20% is the coursework, and redos and retakes are allowed. And so, you know, thinking back to high school, I struggle to see many high schoolers who would put in over 20% on coursework when it doesn't count for more than 20% of your grade. But then you can see how 25% of the classes needed in college are those in study skills. So the remedial courses that these kids are having to take at least in the MinSCU area, they don't get college credit for those. Those are not college credit bearing courses. Students pay for those out of their pocket, and in some instances, you can't even use financial aid for these. So basically, it's like kids having to pay for high school part 2 because they didn't get the full scope the first round. With that, MinSCU has it's Minnesota State Colleges and Universities. They have the 4-year students, the top 50%, or 50% of the top 50% of their class, or have gotten 50% or higher on the MCAs or the ACTs. I mean, that's what gets you into a 4-year college. High school diploma is required for a 2-year college. So of the students going into 2-year college, 40 to 50% of those need remediation courses. Of those going to 4-year colleges, up to 30% require remediation courses. Nearly 40% of those 2-year college students end up dropping out. Just you can presume the debt, right? You're not getting college class or course credit, and because they were enrolled in college, then Stillwater gets to say, look, all of our kids who were accepted into college, but we don't follow up to see if they just left with a bunch of debt or if they actually have a degree. And in the 4-year students, 20% of those drop out for the same reasons. And of those, only 30% can't get into college level courses within 2 years, and 65% can't even get that 4-year degree within 6 years of class. So I have a ton more to say about this. There's not a whole lot of people here. Can we?
We're going to keep to the 3-minute limit.
Okay, well, so the reason this is concerning to me, I'm just going to wrap this up, is that career and college ready, you know, we talked about a lot of things to address that issue, but it really needs to come in at the achievement gap goal. And the achievement gap goal, as I learned, was sort of hijacked by the achievement and integration plan. And so that group didn't really get to dig into any of this stuff. Instead, they got a series of presentations about some programs that already exist. And so as I see it, the achievement and integration, or the achievement gap goal, is pretty much the same as the plan that it's been for the past few years, which has not yielded positive results on our MCAs. And since those are the statutory requirement by the district to teach the minimum of standards, I think that needs to be addressed and taken more seriously before other projects. Thank you.
The next name on our list here is Paula O'Loughlin.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Paula O'Loughlin, and I reside at 2998 John Quill Trail in Lake Elmo, Minnesota, 55042. Chair Petrie, Superintendent Lansfield, members of the board, I appreciate the opportunity to speak to you this evening, and I'd like to open up with a favorite quote by Maya Angelou. I am convinced that courage is the most important of all virtues, because without courage, you cannot practice any other virtue consistently. You can be kind for a while, you can be generous for a while, you can even be just for a while, and merciful for a while, and even loving for a while. But it is only with courage that you can be persistently and consistently kind and generous and fair. On June 25th, 2020, almost a year ago today, if you can believe it, the Stillwater Area School Board approved a statement on racial justice. The motion was moved by Director Weisberg, and with the approval of the majority, including Director Riley, the motion passed. I'd like to share a portion of that statement tonight. Quote, "The time is now to join together for racial justice and equality in our community. We must take action to reform the systems that perpetuate racial bias, mistreatment, and unfairness. The Stillwater Area School Board commits to joining together with our students, our families, staff, and community members as we rise to this challenge. It is our responsibility to ensure that each student feels safe, respected, and valued in our schools each and every day. We know we can do better. This effort will be most effective through listening to the voices of our Black, Indigenous, and people of color in our community. The Stillwater Area Board welcomes the opportunity to make real and lasting change, and we invite you to join us." End quote. The lasting and transformative change to ensure that all students can be known and understood and treated fairly takes courage. And as the body who holds the positional power to create those learning conditions for our students, it takes courage from all of you. It takes courage to stand up as an advocate for all students in our district. It takes courage to stand up to the vociferous cadre of adults who perhaps don't even believe in public education to say, "I am here for all students." And it takes courage to look within, to know and love yourself, so that you may begin to know and love another. May I, Chair Petrie, may I finish my last sentence?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. I want to honor the time. Thank you, Director Hockert. Many of us in the community who hold those exact same goals that the board expressed in the racial justice statement, we welcome that opportunity and partnership to make real and lasting change to allow every student in our district to thrive. And we invite each of you to join us. Thank you.
Thank you. And our final speaker tonight is Jim Franklin.
Well, this is a hodgepodge. I'm sorry. I just had a little bit of time, and I wanted to address the board tonight. Can you hear me okay?
You need to speak up a little bit and be sure to give us your name and your address.
Okay. Good evening, Board Chair Petrie, board members, Superintendent Lansfeld, and district staff members. My name is Jim Franklin. I live in West Lakeland Township. I would like to address the behavior of a board member at the last board meeting. Director Riley, you brought the question a book title that was purchased by the district on behalf of a district employee. I question your sincerity and motive in this. You read a quote, which is fine, but then you asked who purchased it, and then you went on to the next subject. I question what you meant by this. Was it intended to create divisiveness? Because you didn't ask where it was used until people started asking you about it. You chose to find a quote to read. You had a whole week to look at this, but you chose to find a quote to read to the public and to try to publicly put down an employee instead of asking the appropriate channels, which you could have done. You complained also about condescending remarks at the board table. I would like to ask if you remember the meeting on September 24th you had, the finance meeting, where you deliberately and negatively mispronounced a fellow board member's name, not once, not twice, but 3 times you did. And if you have a question of it, I know that it happened because I was there. You refused to let me talk as well. You did it in a manner to deliberately degrade her. You seem to hold different standards for others than you do for yourself. Director Riley, you seem to struggle with other people's rights, particularly if they do not align with your own opinion. This is evidenced by your harassment proceedings against an employee who disagreed with you, selective pulling of material purchases in the district from the register, frivolous points and actions that have selectively are brought up to create doubt and are costly to district humans and to the district itself. You willfully do not attend training sessions and refuse to look at another's point of view. It's destructive to the member communities that you serve. Please stop promoting divisiveness and start promoting diversity and cohesion. You always say about taxpayer money. It didn't seem to bother you, the taxpayer money you spent on the previous board for legal expenses in the hundreds of thousands of dollars. That was not approved by the taxpayers.
Mr. Franklin, I think your time is up.
Okay, I have one more sentence. I'm just
Okay.
searching for it. You seem to be focusing on creating doubt within the community. I hope that's not your intent. You need not create doubt, but we need to promote diversity and cohesiveness. Diversity is here to stay. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, we'll move on to the next item on our agenda, which is the superintendent's report. Superintendent Lansfeld.
Thank you, Chair Petrie and Board Directors. First off, we have an acknowledgement from Stillwater City Council. It's a service award for School District 834 staff for not only normal and usual sacrifices made to ensure that our community environment are as safe as possible, but also to voluntarily support the Stillwater Area High School class of 2021 by participating in a graduation parade and for outstanding service in support of the City of Stillwater's mission. So thank you, Stillwater City. That is appreciated. Okay. Next, we have some theater news. Stillwater Area High School senior Paige Clemenhagen was named a Triple Threat Award finalist by the Hennepin Theater Trust. She was recognized by the Trust Spotlight Showcase for her singing, acting, and dancing in Stillwater Spring Variety Show, Stillwater Area High School Illuminations 2021. She was one of just 24 high school students recognized in the state. In addition, Daniel Valerius won Outstanding Performance in a leading role for his work in the production, while Olivia Henson won Outstanding Performance in a supporting role. Stillwater Theater also received the Community Engagement Award for their Shine and Shop local campaign. In all, they received 16 Spotlight Education Awards. Pony Athletics had a successful spring sports season. Senior Anna Weaver captured the state championship in the 3,200 meter run. She set a new personal and school record, running 10:15:27, which was more than 6 seconds faster than the second place finisher. The girls' track and field team qualified 9 entries for state meet, while the boys earned 11 entries. The boys' lacrosse team placed 4th in their first ever state tournament appearance, finishing the season 15-4. The Ponies lost to Lakeville North 10-9. The number 1 ranked girls golf team placed 6th overall at state. They finished with a 2-day total of 677. On the boys team, Henry Lawrence competed at state individually. The number 1 ranked softball team lost to Forest Lake 8-5 in the class AAAA state quarterfinals. It was just their second loss of the season, 23-2, and the top-seeded baseball team lost to Minnetonka 6-5 in 8 innings of the quarterfinals. The Ponies finished the season with a 20-5 record, and Stillwater Area High School marketing students placed 1st, 2nd, and 5th in the Minnesota Best Prep Stock Market Game. The online simulation has students investing $100,000 for 12 weeks. This stock market game engages students in the world of investing and personal finance. And Stillwater Area High School held senior prom outside at the Pony Stadium. Prom was held on Saturday, June 12th, and it looked like a lot of fun, and it was a long time coming. And finally, we've heard from some community members that have had some questions and concerns about critical race theory. A national debate is underway right now, sparked by this theory, and there are widely different understandings of what it is and how it might be impacting our schools. Do we explicitly teach critical race theory as part of the curriculum in Stillwater Area Public Schools? No. Critical race theory is just that. It's a theory. It was developed more than 40 years ago by lawyers, activists, and legal scholars to consider how systems impact people differently in our society. CRT is not included in the Minnesota Department of Ed's K-12 social studies standards and is not taught in our schools. Despite what some media may report, CRT is not synonymous with equity work. That's a very important distinction because while we don't teach CRT, we are a district committed to creating more equitable learning environments for our kids, an environment where all kids have a sense of belonging and inclusivity. In a state with one of the largest achievement gaps in the country, equity work is essential to everything we do. We must remove barriers within our school system so that every single student has the resources and opportunities they need to succeed. If you're a parent, you know that all children are not the same. I have 5 children, and each one has very different personalities and requires very different parenting styles. Our students also learn at different paces and in different ways, and they all come to us with different backgrounds and experiences. So to meet the needs of all of our kids, we train our teachers to use culturally responsive teaching practices to connect a child's culture, languages, and life experiences with what they learn in school. We teach history from all sides, making sure the history of Indigenous people, Black people, and immigrant groups are also represented in social studies lessons. We review achievement data by race, which helps us take meaningful actions and measure progress towards student achievement. We also ask our staff members to have conversations about race and its impact on learning, and to read a wide variety of materials that provide different viewpoints and perspectives for them to consider. And we continually examine our practices and policies to determine what changes are necessary so that we can produce more equitable outcomes for our students. We believe that every student deserves access to schools that are safe, welcoming, and affirming. We know this is a value shared by our community as well. We are grateful for our residents' continued support of their public schools, and I would encourage anyone with questions about what is or what isn't being taught in our schools to reach out to us directly for accurate information. Thank you. And with that, that's the end of my report.
Thank you. We'll move on to the next item on our agenda, which is the consent agenda. A is minutes of June 10th business meeting. Disbursement register is B. C is accept gifts and donations. D is the treasurer's report. E is choir tour. F is COVID-19 academic intervention learning support services. G is Oakland Middle School water softener replacement project. And H is human resources personnel report. Director Riley.
I'd like to pull B, please.
B. Okay.
I'd like to pull H also.
H. Okay. All right, so then I will entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda containing items A, C, D, E, F, and G. Director Hockert. Second, Director Sherman. Okay, all those in favor, please raise your hand and say aye.
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 Those opposed? Nay. All right, passes unanimously. Director Riley,
Thank you.
item B.
Thank you. Item B, the disbursement. On page 24, we go down to Minnehaha Properties, $40,000.
Page 24. Oh, yeah, Stagecoach property?
Yes.
That's the payment that's made for the property where we secure the large portion of our buses. And the monthly fee is $40,000 per month.
That's per month?
Yeah,
Oh. Okay.
sorry, I sound like my kid.
Thank you. If we go still a little further down there, on page 24, we have Enrich Educational Consulting for 8,000. Could somebody elaborate on what that consulting service is?
I did pull the PO on that one to take a look at it, and it's a staff development, that's offered, and, Denise
Cody, I believe it has to do with gate.
Gate,
Okay.
okay.
For gate. Okay. I think there was one more that was on, actually, I think I passed it. Right here. Page 20,
20, okay.
where it's, we have 3 for Forbes Solutions.
Yes. For total, there were 2 individual programs, one for the board and one for the administration workshop. And then there was individual coaching for the other portion of it. And I believe that's correct, but I would defer to Dr. Cherry. Okay?
That's correct.
Good.
Okay, so total on that package altogether, we're at about 51,000. Do we just have one session left? Are we done, or is this something that we're going to keep accruing expense for?
I think correct me, John, were there 3 items there? 3 separate?
3 items, and 2 were for the workshops we had.
Yep.
One with the board and one with the administration. And then there was some individual coaching and et cetera.
Thank you, yes. We still have another session planned with the board, and that is around goal setting. And we, at this time, do not have any additional sessions planned with administration.
Okay, thank you, that is all.
Thank you.
I had one on the disbursement register too. On page 25, there's RMG for $5,000. I think it's bus parking. Is that correct? So my question, and it's not just a question about that, but I know we had an update a couple months ago what our total is for the bus garage facility. And now we're adding to it every month. Could we get another update? And then could we get an update? This is just a general question to whoever wants to tackle it. Could we get another update as to, are we actually going to be able to use that facility in the fall, and what the total is that we've spent?
I don't know the total, but just spoke with our developer yesterday on the phone, and they have been making great progress. I believe, is it the curb? And I'll turn that over to Director Drummerhausen.
Yeah, they're finishing up sewer and water hookup right now to the property. Next week, they're gonna start to finish and reconstruct the road. And then once that gets done, then we'll contact the city and have them come out and do an inspection. So hopefully sometime in July, we'll be able to move into that property and get out of Stagecoach, as well as the, I believe you're referring to the property on Highway 94.
Right.
As well as that.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, the next item, Director Weisberg, did you want to talk about item H?
Yes, hang on one sec. We have one retiree. I just wanted to say it was Carolyn Kirby, retired as a paraprofessional after 18 years at Anderson Elementary, and I just wanted to say congratulations. Thank you.
Thank you for calling that out. Would you like to move those 2 items then?
Yes. So moved.
Great. Second, Director Sherman. So it is moved and seconded that we accept the disbursement register and the human resources personnel report. All in favor, please raise your hand and say aye.
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 Those opposed, nay. Okay, passes unanimously. Thank you very much. We'll move on to the reports section of our meeting. The first one is the summer program report. Dr. Cherry, are you going to take that away?
Thank you, Chair Petrie. Directors, Board Directors, Superintendent Lansfeld. Yes, we are going to give you an overview of our summer programs report. We have a team here to do this. The plan is to do a rather concise report. We've had some questions around our summer programming this year, especially following our school year that we had with multiple learning model changes. A lot of questions about what is on the agenda for our students this summer. And so we have a team here. I'm going to kick us off, and then Annette Solomon's going to talk about community education. Paulie is going to talk about our extended school year program. We're going to give a little bit of information about summer success and credit recovery. We've got some experts waiting in the wings there in case there are any specific questions. And then we're going to tell you about what is different this year. So. I can't advance it. Joan?
Maybe you need to go to view. Is it on the share screen?
There we go. Thank you. All right. So, like I said, we're going to provide a very comprehensive view in hopefully a rather concise format. We are providing some of our supports are for all students. Some of those supports are just for some students. And then we have some new opportunities for a few students that are related to some exciting new partnerships that you all just approved this evening related to the partnerships that we will now have in place to work with some educational service providers.
All right, thank you. So first of all, I want to make one correction on this slide. Oh, no, they did catch the correction, so we're good to go. So just reflecting on community education over the last couple of years, as you can imagine, last summer our numbers were quite low in comparison to what we're used to. Summer is the busiest time for community education as it relates to youth programming. And so we were thrilled to see this year that our numbers went back up. They're not back up to our usual experience, but they're up quite a bit. Part of our challenge this year was that we have struggled to find individuals who are available to do instruction or to be a part of our childcare programs. And so we do have some waiting lists right now, I'm afraid. We've done everything we can to try and expand our offerings as we've identified programs that are of particular interest to the community. We've tried to look for additional instructors so that we can get more families in. So you can see for our enrichments, athletics, aquatics, and even take-home kits, we have, and this was pulled about a week ago, but at that time we had 4,030 participants amongst those programs. With Adventure Club, we have 349 students that were registered as of last week. And then in our Pony Activity Center, which this represents all members, so all ages, but we had 814 members. Our numbers continue to climb, so I venture a guess, if I were to look at it today, the numbers would be even higher. So are there any questions? At the end, all right.
I'll provide a little bit of information about our summer school opportunities as it relates to ongoing programs around summer success. First of all, this is our summer school program that serves students in grades K through 8. This year we have 328 students enrolled. Our summer success runs from July 12th through the 29th. And with this, we have 288 of those students that are in the Summer Success, and 40 of those students are in Leatherland, working on Orton, Gillingham, working with literacy. So Summer Success is a little bit a larger enrollment this year than we've had in previous years. As the other additional summer school opportunity that we have every year is credit recovery. And this is where we are helping students catch up on credits that they weren't successful in during the school year. Credit recovery options run year-round. This summer, we have 160 students who are enrolled, and credit recovery is started actually. Actually, it's the 7th through the 24th, runs online this year. And just to give you a little bit of perspective, like we said, this credit recovery is a year-round program. In the fall, we had 65 students. We had a special session this year. Midwinter, there were 75 students, and then in the spring, we had 120 students. So this is something that we're constantly working with our students to make sure that they're receiving those credits and on track to helping them graduate. And now I'm going to pass it over to Paul, and he's going to tell you a little bit about ESY.
Yeah, yeah, it's my pleasure to talk a little bit about our extended school year program. And it's a program we run every year, but it's a little bit unique this year. Last summer, we ran the program all online, and our teachers and staff and students, did a great job, but it's not the same as being in person. So we're very excited that we're providing a full traditional in-person program. This year we have 110 students that will be participating. They're all students with disabilities or have IEPs. That's a larger number than we typically have, and I think it's because our families are prioritizing this opportunity for them this year. So we're excited about that. It runs from July 12th through the 29th. And it's students that are eligible for extended school year. It's based on the IEP team and the decision with the parents around the need for that service. And it's really to help some of our students with disabilities are at a high risk for regression over the summer. So we make sure we get services to them in about the middle of the summer so that they can continue with those skills and make sure they start the next fall off kind of where they left off in the spring. And then we also run our early childhood special education program July 6th to the 23rd. And that's actually a year-round program. So there are different times during the school year where those young children are not in session. But again, they run in the summer for the same reason, just to keep that continuation of learning happening through the summer. So that covers that.
Yep, and then it's back to me. And so this is the new part. This is something that is brand new for our district, our educational service partnerships. We are looking at what do we do in terms of opportunities to expand the learning, do some very specific tutoring, skill-based instruction for our students who are struggling. And so this is part of funded by grants, and it is through the American Rescue Plan Act, where the majority of this is coming from, about $250,000. And then the other part of it is ESSER. You've heard that a few times as John has been bringing this COVID funding to you for updates. But a portion of our elementary and secondary school emergency rescue plan funds are also contributing to this, about $100,000 coming from ESSER. The educational service partnerships provide academic support, and the district is partnering with these community businesses and organizations to provide these highly trained tutors who can provide academic learning supports for our identified students. This will start on July 1. Now that we have your approval that came tonight, we can move forward with those contracts and begin working with the organizations that have been identified. The funding is good through March of 2020. And so we will not only be able to provide this starting in July this summer, but this will be ongoing. And this will be able to support our students with the greatest need on the skill-based instruction. Another item that's new to us this year, and again, funding through a grant, is our summer preschool program, and Annette can share.
So you may have heard that the legislature approved some funding that we could use for summer preschool. We received notification about a week before school ended that there were some of those funds available to us. As you can imagine, because we did not already have a 4 or 5 year old summer program planned through our school district programs, that we were concerned that we wouldn't be able to accept the money. But what we have learned and what we are able to do is actually distribute those funds to other providers within the school district boundaries. And so therefore, we have been working with local providers to identify students that meet the qualifications, and we will be attempting to spend down the full $14,400. If we're unable to spend that amount for this summer, then we will push forward any remaining funds to next summer and do the same.
And with that, we are open to any questions the board may have. And this, again, it's an informational report. There's no action that's being required. So happy to answer any questions you may have.
Okay, thank you for that presentation, very informative. Questions? Director Hockert.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair PG. So this is kind of exciting. I mean, hearing all these opportunities for our kids for the summer is really encouraging. And my big question is how do kids get invited to this kind of programming? Is there a process through the school district, or is it a first come, first serve? The parents want to get it? Like, how do kids get into these extra services, particularly for the tutoring stuff?
So each one of these will all have different answers. In general, Community Ed puts out a brochure, and it's everybody please come, right?
Right.
As it relates to programming and ESY, it is identified students with IEPs who need that additional support to make progress on their goals. As it relates to summer success and then these additional supports with our community partners, it's identifying the students based on their academic performance and where they're struggling. So with summer success, we're looking at generally the students who are performing at the lowest 40 percentile in their classes. Families receive an invitation letter. It is an optional service, and families do need to provide their own transportation. But then from there, we invite students to come in and join our programs. As it relates to the new partnerships that we're looking at, those are very targeted skill-based instruction that we're able to provide. And so we'll be looking at the lowest 30% in the areas, and then be working with those families to inform them of what services are available and how we think that that will help support the students' academic needs.
Okay, thanks. Anyone else? Director Sherman.
I have two questions, but one is, I know we do these summer programs, and I know it's probably to to stop that learning loss that can happen in the summer with students who can't afford that loss. But is there any kind of measurement that goes on, like throughout the year after a student participates in a program like this? Do you track their performance throughout the year, or?
Yeah, absolutely. So that is part of the program that we are establishing with our partners, our community partners. It is educational data, so we will have that ongoing report about how are the students doing, are they making progress in the targeted areas. Again, this is very targeted skill-based instruction, so we'll be able to monitor that and determine if the intervention is working or not.
Fabulous,
Yep.
thank you.
I just had a question about the funding and what we were able to do with it. I know that some of this was federal funding, and I know that there was some discussion at the state level about whether to provide extra funds for students who may have, needed a little extra help after a lot of distance learning this past year. And I see that it was state funding that paid for the kindergarten services. Did we get any money from the state, to provide for that extra learning this summer? And how much more extra learning are we able to give students this year because of it?
The governor set aside money for each school district, and it was based on title programming. And Stillwater's share was $251,000 and some odd dollars. And that was used in the partnership. And then we, as mentioned by Dr. Cherry, SR2, which was approved today, by the way, the other $100,000 was used to cover that. And I think we'll bring a breakdown of where those federal dollars and COVID dollars are spent down the road, if the board so desires.
So in terms of the summer success then, are we able to serve more students this year because we got that extra funding?
Eric, can you talk a little bit about numbers?
Yeah, so the summer success numbers are up slightly, but the program is currently full, and that's related to building capacity. But we did not have to turn any students away. So we had about 750, 800 students identified, and as you saw, we're serving about 321 of those. And those were all folks who, filled out the application and said, yes, this is something that we want for our child.
Okay. And so the partnership then that you have with these local entities, that will help bring students back up to where they need to be.
Right, so it's very targeted. So working with the very specific needs of the students and filling those skill gaps is the goal of the partnerships.
Okay, all right, thank you. Any other questions, Director Sherman?
I think you mentioned, and correct me if I'm wrong, transportation is not provided. Do we know how many people don't participate because of transportation? Is that something that you'll ever be able to track or know, or?
Track that in any way, Eric?
Are you talking specifically about summer success programming? We do provide transportation for summer success programming.
Oh, yeah.
Not the partnership one. But.
Oh, I'm sorry, I was talking about summer success. You're talking about the federal funding dollars,
Yeah,
okay.
two separate, yeah.
And then my last question, and this is on this, there's 3 programs, so sorry, on the summer success program. I know that there was a presentation last year that students participated and taught in these or kind of partner taught. Is that still going on, and how is that engaging students in the school?
Really excited to talk about it.
Can you hear me?
Continue.
I got kind of a booming voice, so the microphone. So there's a couple of things. So the student leaders are part of a larger initiative around diversifying the teaching pathway. And we've been doing that work for 5 years now. On Monday, June 7th, we kind of kicked off with a professional learning opportunity. We had 28 teachers actually in this space. We tore this room apart. We had 28 teachers and we had 28 student leaders. The layer that we've added this year is we're expanding on our partnership with Century College. So Century College has a 2-year AS degree in teaching. And when students graduate from that, they can matriculate to 4-year universities and be out in 4 years. There's these articulation agreements. Century College is actually sending their students who are in that program to do their practicums in our summer success programming. So it's going to be a great opportunity for them to have that real world experience, and a great opportunity for our students to be able to talk to them about the lived experience as a community college student. And then when the kids get back in the fall, they have the opportunity to enroll in a post-secondary enrollment options class at Century College called Introduction to the Teaching Profession.
Thank you.
I just have one more question. And maybe I'm just not aware, and I could probably get some information from Director Weisberg on this, but I wasn't aware that there were preschool programs during the summer. So I guess I wonder if you can tell me a little bit more about that.
Sure. So preschool programs, part of the system of early education is that childcare programs seek to be 3 or 4 star rated. If they achieve that 3 or 4 star rating, they're required to have a curriculum and assess a student's progress. And so essentially, you can call it a preschool, right? And so written within the language of the funding, it was allowable to use the funds for 3 or 4 star rated programs. So we have a number of those in the Valley.
So they essentially go all year long then, right?
Yes, they can.
Okay, all right, thank you. Any other questions? Okay, thank you very much for that report. All right, we'll move on to the next item, which is World's Best Workforce Advisory Committee report, and that is Dr. Cherry as well, with a new set of
And I have
assistants,
some
it looks
invited,
like.
yes, so we have some invited guests. Yep. We're going to play musical chairs here. Okay, Chair Petrie, Board Director, Superintendent Lansfeld. We are here this evening to provide a report for you on our World's Best Workforce Advisory Committee. These are 2 members of our advisory committee this year. We have Brianna DeFore and Mira Gregory, and they're going to share in the report out with me this evening. So thanks for being here. All right, I will start it out with just a little bit of information of what is World's Best Workforce, provide again some information about the legislation that's attached to this. I will talk about the charge of the committee. What does this advisory committee do? The committee membership, and both of these individuals here will share a little bit about their experience serving on the committee and the activities that we had this year. And then we will share with you the recommended goals and strategies that were discussed amongst the advisory committee. The World's Best Workforce comes from the statute. You've heard me say this a couple of times. The definition of World's Best Workforce, what that means is that we're striving to meet school readiness goals, have all 3rd grade students achieve grade level literacy, close the academic achievement gap amongst all racial and ethnic groups of students and between students living in poverty and not living in poverty, and have all students attain college and career readiness before graduating from high school, and finally have all students graduate from high school. Those are the 5 key areas of World's Best Workforce. And what school districts are required to do is to have a long-term strategic plan in place that maps to these 5 key areas. At a school board meeting, that we are required as a district to adopt that comprehensive long-term strategic plan, and that it must improve and support teaching and learning, and it's aligned with the World's Best Workforce. Our current strategic plan was developed to apply for the years of 2018 through 2021. So looking at the World's Best Workforce Advisory Committee, this is also part of the legislation is that each school district will have a district advisory committee. Not that it would have to be called the World's Best Workforce Advisory Committee, but each district must have a district advisory committee. And the focus of the advisory committee is to make recommendations on student achievement goals and measures, to consider the pandemic barriers this year is something that we took on to valid and reliable measures. That was one of the key areas. We knew that our pandemic was going to have an impact on our students and our students' success. And so we had a concerted focus around that this year. MDE, the Minnesota Department of Education, recommends that all goals as it relates to these 5 key areas are SMART goals, that they're specific, that they're measurable, that they're attainable, they're realistic, and they're timely. And so our advisory committee engaged in a SMART goal workshop, really, and learned a little bit more about this and how that relates to setting goals and those measures. The committee membership, this year we had 50 committee members that were included. It was a committee that was made up of parents and students and teachers and administrators and support staff and additional community members. Very large group. We did not have 50 members that attended every one of our meetings, but we did invite all community members and parents and students at the beginning of the year to join this committee. We had an interest form that was put out, and we invited everyone that applied, everyone that expressed interest. We invited them to participate in the committee. Every school community is represented on the committee, and so it was really a great group of stakeholders from all areas of the district. Our activities this year were, it was a different way of doing business. I'll say that. It was a different way of doing business. We met virtually throughout the year. We started in November, and we met generally one time a month until we got to the part where we broke up into small groups. And then for a couple of months, small groups around those 5 key areas met. And some of those groups met weekly. Some of them met more often than that. Some met biweekly. It really depended on the members in the subcommittee or the small group and the goals that they were drafting and what it was, the plan that they had in front of them to review the various strategies and provide some input on that. But all of our meetings were virtual, and that was a new way for us to try to do advisory committees. We reviewed our district goals and outcomes. We participated in a data workshop. That's where we really honed in on those SMART goals. We examined student data. We dug into the Minnesota report card, which is publicly available, so we're able to see how our students are performing as it relates to our MCAs, our graduation rates, how students are who are identified as English language learners are progressing in their academic English skills, attendance data. We were able to really dig into a lot of information through the Minnesota report card. And then, like I said, we broke up into small groups, and we asked those small groups to draft SMART goals, looking at the previous year's goals and thinking ahead and really looking at what kind of measures are we going to have in place moving forward. We already knew that we didn't have MCA scores from last year, that our graduation rates were kind of like, we didn't know what kind of data we were going to get. So this committee was charged with thinking outside of the box, thinking about what kind of data are we going to have moving forward to figure out how are we doing as a district and how are we moving forward in meeting the needs of our students. And so each of those small groups had administrative leads that helped facilitate the small groups, and then our 2 community members here tonight are just going to give a little bit of input. And if Priya, do you want to start and just talk about your time on your small group?
Yeah. So my small group was responsible for the college and career readiness as well as the graduation rate kind of sectors of that. Those are 2 things very tied closely together, so our groups kind of combined. We met as a small group weekly for about 5 or 6 weeks over Zoom. A couple of those sessions we invited various teachers and staff members to kind of help introduce us to the existing programs that are related to our topics. so that we could kind of find out more about them, ask questions, and see if, you know, there were new programs kind of coming up. Besides that, our group members, we deep dived into some of those data things that Dr. Cherry just talked about, including ACT scores, MCA scores. Obviously, we didn't have them for the current year, but and then graduation rates, among other things. So yeah, that's how our subgroup operated.
So I'm Mira Gregory. I was on the Read Well by third grade subgroup of the advisory, and it was a really great experience. I kind of came to it. I have 3 sons that are in the district, and they kind of range in their reading skills. One could probably read by himself with no help. One has good skills, and the other one struggled a little bit with dyslexia. And I think coming back to the pandemic did create a lot of challenges for educators. So I think that we were all cognizant of that, helping, you know, with the challenge to help with any sort of learning loss. Our group met virtually all year and had, I think, really productive discussions by Zoom. And I feel like our collaboration was really great. I feel like we're all kind of trying to head in the same direction. So that was really a great thing for people who've been invested in this for a while. I feel like there was a shared understanding that reading instruction is complex, absolutely crucial to our students, and accompanied by a need to constantly reassess instruction, troubleshoot implementation, which is extra hard during the pandemic, and acknowledge that ongoing learning's never done. So all of the parties involved are always continuing to do that. I think we learned too, and this is a little bit different from kind of your the hands-on approach, but that there's never enough that can be done for reading instructions, that it's a huge task to be undertaken to help kids to read well by third grade. I think the hope of our group was to bring passion for moving forward, a commitment to deliver programs and training with intention in order to that those programs are used with fidelity. Many students across our nation who struggle with reading receive support when their families are capable of funding extra support for their own children with their personal resources. Personally, I really appreciate that everyone had a value, I feel like, in the group to make sure that everyone gets what they need, that those with less in our school systems, whether that's a skill or a financial resource, you know, that there's a hard push to strive to provide the most robust teacher training and programming to benefit all of our kids. I think our committee included administration, teachers, an interventionist, parents, community members. We took, again, into consideration all the struggles that players faced the last year with COVID, but still the understanding to reevaluate where we are, monitor, and grow. It was decided that the emphasis on the first grade reading skills was advisable. We concluded that the major change for our students in their reading journey had to be addressed as early as we're capable of doing, so that we get the best outcomes for kids, not just in school, but in life. Reading's a core skill needed to succeed in most other areas of any child's education. The focus on first grade allows monitoring of specific skill growth and needs to better ensure by third grade those kids can read well and obtain grade proficiency. Our goal represented measured and obtainable growth, but I feel like our vision was more loftier in reality, and we hope to put that together in our strategies. So the goal is the percentage of first grade students meeting the FastBridge proficiency benchmark on the spring.
Let's go to, you know what, let's hold on to that, because we're gonna get right back to the goals for each one of them.
Okay.
Hang on
All right.
just a second.
Okay.
Okay,
Sorry.
that's okay. Just roll right in. So let's get into that. So the 5 different areas, right? Each one of these committees came up with a goal that they were recommending, and then also some strategies. Some of these strategies were strategies that maybe are already in place in the district, and they thought that those were important things to continue. Some of the strategies pertain to brand new ideas, and so they varied based on each one of the committees, the small groups. The way that we did our work this year, we never came back full circle and did any type of consensus workshop to say that all 50 of those members would agree on every one of these goals that they're laid out here. These are really specific to each of the 5 working groups. Okay. So the first working group was around all children being ready for school. And this group was one where they really looked at last year's goal and thought that they needed to reset. Thank you. So their goal is very different in what they were trying to measure. They wanted to increase the percentage of incoming kindergarten students who had attended a preschool program. The previous year's goal was really about students who attended a Stillwater area preschool, one of our preschools and one of our one on site here. And really looking at this idea of all children being ready for school. We know that we do not have the capacity to provide preschool for all of our incoming kindergartners. So they really backed up and thought, how do we do this? And so really it's about increasing those, all of our kindergartners to have a preschool program. And so looking at FY 2022, at least 50% of our kindergartners will have participated in a preschool program. So how are we gonna do that? The strategies are to revise the enrollment process. First of all, we have to figure out if our K families, if their children have attended a preschool. We don't even know that information yet. So the first thing we need to do is get that as part of our enrollment process and start collecting that information right away. The second thing that we need to do is to partner with Washington County Resources for Childcare and our local providers. Again, reaching out, looking at those community providers, and create more of a preschool awareness campaign. We know how essential preschool programming is, and we want to make sure that all of our families in our community know about that. So that awareness campaign is the strategy that was recommended here. The next group was the all third graders can read at grade level. So now I'm gonna pass it back to Mira and she's gonna get into the goal. Yeah.
So the goal, the percentage of first grade students meeting the FastBridge proficiency benchmark on the spring early reading composite will improve 57% meeting or exceeding the goal proficiency benchmark during the spring 2019 screening to 59% meeting or exceeding the spring proficiency benchmark during the spring 2022 screening. Strategies are 1, professional development and implementation of phonemic awareness and phonics instructions in kindergarten and first grade and Tier 1 and Tier 2 instructions. This strategy acknowledges the efficiency of putting intentional efforts of maximizing the strength of programming for early learners through continued professional development with a focus on foundational skills. The goal in the strategy is to capture as many students as possible to maximize it, to minimize, the needs of, hopefully, of other tier instruction. It's a specific focus on all students. You know, so I think some of us that were in the group were especially excited to see, you know, focus on skilled professional development, especially as there's a lot of growth in this area that we'd like to see represented. The professional development's ongoing, necessary to keep our staff in the best positioning possible for our students. Again, reiterating that we should all be learning always. 2, professional development in the science of reading, 4-part processing model for tier instruction and instructional design for English language learners. So I think our district, as well as many others, are kind of adjusting to changes and implementation of this 4-part processing into our programming to better respond, provide the best delivery of programming with an emphasis on the science of reading, and also reevaluating in general, as it said, the English language instruction. 3, research and internally audit Tier 3 intervention, and 4, offer comprehensive reading intervention services for K through 2 learners. So Again, I think the well-staffed, trained, and sufficiently funded intervention, as well as professional development, should be a huge priority. It was a big priority to the subgroup, and so we hope it's also a huge priority to our community and board.
All right, thanks, Mira. I'm going to take the next one. This is the group that focused on our racial and economic achievement gaps and working to close those gaps. The goal here is that 72% of our students who take the pre-ACT will demonstrate college readiness through the college readiness benchmarks by June of 2022. When we're looking at these gaps, we know that the gaps that exist between our student groups are really multifaceted. They're very complex, they're multi-layered, and when we look at the gaps, we look at our standardized testing gaps, we look at our achievement gaps, we have opportunity gaps, we have exposure gaps, and here the group really focused in on the pre-ACT. That is tied to one of the strategies that we're measuring in our achievement and integration plan. So some of the strategies that are laid out here are really the focus of our achievement and integration plan, which is a 3-year plan. It goes from 2020 through 2023. That's a plan all in itself. But looking at one of the targeted intervention programs there is AVID. And what we do is we really focus on that pre-ACT as an assessment to see how our students are doing and making progress in college readiness. When we look at some of the other strategies that are listed there, our family and community engagement is a big piece of this. We have 3 different community groups that were called out in general, and this group spent time learning more about each of these community groups and the impact that they have. NAPAC is our Native American Parent Advisory Committee. Our Caminos group is our Latinx parent group. And then our women's engagement group, this is a group of Muslim women leaders. And so each of these groups we partner with to help really understand the needs of our students. What can we be doing as a district to help partner with our parents and our community members to best support our students within our schools? Some of the other strategies, such as AVID, BAR, and Pathways, these are all programs that we already have in place. These are strategies that are in place. So when we look at our evidence-based instructional strategies, that's really what we're talking about when we are mentioning the AVID program here. When we're looking at multi-tiered systems of support and the relationships that we know have an impact on our students, that's our BAR program. And then when we look at looking at exploration, career exploration and opportunities and meeting students where they're energized and where they're at and providing that additional exploration, that's the Pathways program. So in partnership, these 3 areas, these 3 key areas are a huge strategy to help us close those gaps. And then the last one is the ongoing job embedded professional development for staff. That is just an ongoing need that this group sees as an essential piece to continue to strive to close these gaps for our students. Now I'm going to pass it over to Brianna.
Okay, thank you. So our committee, when we first started talking about the college and career readiness, we had an early theme that emerged that we really wanted to change the format of what our goal was. Some of the previous college and career readiness goals were only tracking ACT scores, which does not come close to capturing all of the students, only the college-bound ones. And in fact, the goal from the previous World's Best Workforce was that 54% of the students would achieve a 23 or higher on the ACT. So that goal alone is missing about half of our students in this category. So Some of our members in our subcommittee had been part of the world's best workforce in previous years and kind of mentioned that, this had been discussed before, that this wasn't, the ACT scores weren't a great way to actually measure this, but so far nothing had changed. And so we made a commitment to each other that we wanted to be the group to change this. So to kind of start doing that, we reviewed the college and career readiness goals of other districts, not only around the metro, but around the state, including White Bear Lake, Forest Lake, Maplewood, South Washington County, and Alexandria. After reviewing all of those, we actually decided to model our goal after the Alexandria model as a multi-layered goal, which tries to capture all types of students, no matter what they plan to do after graduation. Because we know that college is not and should not be the only option for all of our graduating seniors. And so that's kind of how we ended up with the goal we have here. There was lots of passionate discussion about each category and what we wanted that specific goal to be. But our main goal was to capture as many students as possible, whether they're going to a 2 or 4 year college, entering a trade or vocational school, heading straight into the workforce, joining the military, or many of various other options. So what we came up with was that 98% of our students will demonstrate college or career readiness by completing at least one of the following items. And that was receiving a grade of C or higher in a college credit-bearing course, receiving a score of 3 or higher on an AP exam, receiving a proficient score on the MCA science, reading, and math exam, or successfully completing an exploratory or developmental experience through the Pathways program. And so the strategies that we came up with to support that goal, the first one we know is kind of a lofty goal, but we want the counselors to meet with incoming 9th graders, all of them, as kind of a first touch point to their high school experience. This will be an opportunity for them to introduce the Pathways program, which we definitely felt was a huge part of this goal. And kind of let them know they have options. I think one of the things that students struggle with is, there's lots of programming out there for them, but they may not know about all of it. So this meeting with the counselors would be a first opportunity to introduce those. That would also be a chance to do one of the aptitude assessments, such as the ASVAB, MCIS, or the U Science, which is a new one that the district has been using. And lastly, this is a chance for students to discuss their own personal and academic goals and create a personalized learning plan. The second strategy is to continue and expand the peer tutoring program for grades 6 through 12. The third one is that a personalized learning plan should include some type of aptitude assessment, like I was mentioning before with the counselor meeting. The fourth one is Pathways planning and staff development to help integrate the Pathways concepts and strategies into the classroom and to reinforce some of those exploratory opportunities that we've started to develop. We also recommend doing a plan, do, study, act cycle for those professional development to make sure that we are still heading in the right direction. And then lastly, to create a Pathways Advisory Board that would be mainly responsible to expand the business and community partnerships in the program, so we have more opportunities for our students here locally. To encourage the creation of new exploratory opportunities like work to learn, micro-internships, and apprenticeships. This would also help build relationships and kind of create a marketplace of employers and profiles in the area. And lastly, they would be responsible for designing a CAPS course for the 21-22 school year, along with some interdisciplinary projects that can be integrated into the classroom coursework. All right, and then our group was also responsible for the graduation rates. And so we knew this was very closely tied to all the conversations we had just had. Which is why we ended up with this goal that seems probably higher compared to other years, that 98% of students graduation, or that the Stillwater 4-year graduation rate will be at least 98%. We discussed that if, we're talking about our goal is 98% of our kids will be college and career ready based on those different categories and options that they can achieve that. We expect that those kids should be graduating as well. There shouldn't be kind of a gap in that. The previous year was 95.5%, so we did make kind of a big jump, but that was the reasoning for that. The strategies to support this is kind of continuing some of the programs we already have, such as AVID, BAR, the PSAT, and pre-ACT, along with other targeted intervention programs to enhance and build specific academic, social, emotional, and leadership skills in our students. Also to the transition portfolio for students with disabilities should start in 9th grade. This ensures access and targeted instruction on those transition standards in areas of post-secondary education, vocational skills, and independent living skills. And lastly, we recommend we continue to provide flexible learning options for our students, including online and blended courses.
So this is, again, a report for your information. This is our advisory committee's work. I want to say a huge thank you to both Bree and Mira for coming here to help present the work of the committee and their specific subcommittees. It's been a very different year, and just they have been so engaged and so in it 100%. So thank you to the two of you for helping to present our committee's work. Our next steps in moving forward is we're looking for the school board, if there's going to be any revision to the school board goals. From there, moving forward, we'll look at the district strategic plan, take this advisory committee's work into consideration, and see if there are any changes, updates to our district strategic plan. From there, looking at in the fall, all of our schools will also have our school improvement plan. So it's really looking at that aligned goal setting and planning for the year. And so with that, that is our report from our advisory committee, and we are open to any questions you may have for us.
Thank you, Dr. Cherry, and thank you, Brianna and Mira, for all of your work. Volunteer work can be really time intensive and sometimes frustrating, and so I truly appreciate the fact that you were willing to put the time in, because that sort of volunteer work helps our district be better. So thank you so much for what you did. Questions, Director Hockert?
Sure. I think I'll start with Mira. I have a question for both of you, but first of all, I wanted to really celebrate the fact that you guys are really looking out for our kids so much, and that Mira, you particularly mentioned kind of making sure that we have resources in our schools for families who don't have the resources to really support our kids, and I feel like that's a really important point, especially coming out of the pandemic, and a lot of changes have happened for our families. And I guess my question isn't really for you, but in your goal, you talked a lot about professional development being a really essential piece of embedding these supports for our students within the school day and within our current curriculum. So back to the administration, how is our professional development budget looking? If that's really become a theme tonight for our in our work session and now in World's Best Workforce, do we have the funding available to support these important goals?
Well, I think as it relates to funding, I know Dr. Tyne is going to be sharing with us the proposed budget for our upcoming school year. As it relates to professional development and what's been spent in 2021, this current school year, we're just at the point right now where we're getting the last expenditures in. But as soon as we have that final information, we'll bring a report back to the board. Okay?
Thank you.
Director Weisberg.
Thank you. We talked about this a little bit when we heard the plan for Read Well by 3rd grade. I just have a really hard time with the goal being so low for all 3rd graders reading at grade level, especially when the goal for the high school is proficiency for MCAs. The fact that we start out with our lower grades, and the goal is 57% for Fast Bridge, going only from 57% to 59%. And we got a little bit of an explanation about that last meeting, saying that it was the first time they had used that one assessment. I just have a hard time thinking how are we going to expect them to get to proficiency in high school if we set such a low goal in elementary school? And I got a comment from a community member that said the Minnetonka parents in the Minnetonka district are throwing a fit at a 78% goal. So if we're not even setting a goal of being proficient, I just have a hard time with that. And is there a possibility to change it at this point, or to set a goal that is a little more aggressive?
I'll answer that one in two ways. First of all, this is the advisory committee's report, and so this is something where the school district now needs to set our district goals, right? So this is the advisory committee's recommendations to our district, and so yes, absolutely, the board has the ability to reset that goal. I'll also share this with you, is that this team focused really hard on setting SMART goals and going back to what's achievable. I can tell you right now, the COVID pandemic has been hard on me. I've gained over 19 pounds. I'd love to lose that 19 pounds this week, but it's not going to happen. So I got to think about what is the checkpoints and the progression along the way. And so we think about that in terms of our goals for achievement as well. We want to set goals that are realistic and achievable, and we want to push ourselves. We want to push ourselves hard, but we also want to think, what can our system handle in a portion of time? And so would I love to see all 100% of our students scoring proficient tomorrow? Yes, I would. But we also need to think about how can we move our system forward to ensure that we're continuing to progress and move forward. And we want to focus on what's realistic. So I would say yes, keep pushing, because that's where we want to go. We also just want to be realistic on what we can achieve.
Director Parbaini.
Thank you, Chair Petrie. Brianna, I really want to thank both of you for your presentation. Like Chair Petrie said, it's not easy to volunteer. You guys have done fantastic work here. My question is, Dr. Cherry, how do you, in terms of the goals, I think I understand where Director Weisberg is coming from, but I also understand that we have to start from somewhere. How did you guys come up with that goal? Did you compare it to, what was the comparison as to why we chose that particular percentage? Did we compare it to any other school, or are we comparing it to just the trends?
Yeah, we typically look at where we're starting from. And then based on our strategies or whatever we put in place, how far can we push ourselves? How far can we get in terms of growth? So I don't know if either of you want to talk at all about what you talked about in your subcommittees.
I mean, I think that a 2% increase, as I understand it, is a pretty typical increase that you might put into a SMART goal. But speaking to your concern, you know, as a parent and someone who's obviously interested in this subject, would I like to write 100%, of course, but I feel like that we felt like our charge as advisory was more in the strategy part of that, in hopes that the goal would, or that the results would exceed the goal regardless. But
thank you.
Director Riley.
Thanks. You know, going back and touching kind of on what Director Weisberg was talking about, I am in complete agreement there. I guess I'm struggling a little bit, and personally, I feel that maybe we should be looking at our grading system, that it aligns with what our expectations are in achievement, and because they're two different stories. You know, our grading system for proficiency is an F, really, and so our kids are being told one thing, and then they're testing and being told something different. And so if, you know, during our daily activities and our daily work, if our expectations were a little higher, that might help our outcomes when it comes to, you know, all of the goals that we're trying to make. I would really love for that. To me, it just doesn't make sense. You're playing a game you'll never catch up on, or you'll never conquer, you know? One of the other questions I have is, we have added pathways into this, and I thought part of a SMART goal or part of the way we did this was that we weren't supposed to really use new programming or pilot programming. We were supposed to kind of use things that were already in existence. And I struggle with that a little bit because of funding. And I mean, if something is dependent upon budget cuts or I don't know that it's smart to have some of your strategies and goals that that are dependent upon those things that can fluctuate whether, that strategy will be successful or even be in existence. So I'm kind of concerned a little bit about having pathways in there because it's new and it's pilot. It's not anything that we've established and have, solid background in. So that is another question. Last question I have for right now is that if we go down to the racial and economic achievement gaps, it says it right in the goal, and so I'm kind of wondering how the goal is gonna demonstrate the actual achievement gap being closed. Why aren't we just using that?
I'll respond to the first question about the Pathways program and the way that that's added into the college and career readiness goal. And again, these are one-year goals. So the way that the goal reads is by June of 2022, 98% of all Stillwater area high school students will demonstrate college or career readiness by completing at least one of the following. And there's 4 different items. The 4th item is successfully completed an exploratory or developmental experience through the Pathways program. That is already in place for next year. And so that would be something that would be measurable for next year. I can understand where you're coming from for an ongoing need, but that was the intent of this group as it relates to a piece added into the goal. The other item around the achievement gap piece of it is we're actually, as a district and a leadership team, we're in discussion about how do we measure our differences in student outcomes between our student groups, between our racial, ethnic student groups and our special populations. Digging into that data. We know that we don't have our MCA scores. We don't have more of our typical scores that we would traditionally use, but we do pick apart that data. And so I would imagine as we're moving forward and creating our district strategic plan, we'll probably have more conversations around that and want to be thinking about how we set those goals. And so I think that that's a really great point. Thank you, Director Riley.
Do you mind if I jump in
Yeah.
on the college and career readiness portion of that? I appreciate your concern. That was something we did talk about in our committee because we knew that the Pathways program is just a pilot program. And we had lots of discussion about, knowing that this is very tied to funding availability. And, we're kind of recommending to continue expanding that and investing in that. So we knew that it was a risk putting it on that list. But based on the discussions that we had and, learning more from some of the staff and teachers about what that, can be, what it is right now and how that can grow, we thought that was a really important piece and something that we were really excited about in, kind of changing the way we look at college and career readiness and giving the best opportunities for our students.
Thanks. Don't get me wrong, I support Pathways. It makes me nervous when you have a goal oriented around something that isn't established and funding depends on that goal, so.
Director Hockert. Thanks. My question actually ties right back into this, so Brianna, back to you. First of all, your presentation on kind of the shift in direction on the college and career readiness, I commend you guys for making that shift. I think that was a really important catch to recognize that we weren't assessing or setting a goal for all of our student population. And I think that this is a really comprehensive, thoughtful set of guidelines that hopefully we can move forward with. And I guess my question is, when are these goals like due? Like when is the end of this cycle? And then how do we assess if we've met those goals and what happens if we fall short, particularly going back to Director Riley's comment about if we are setting goals based on new programs that are dependent on funding, of course.
Yeah, so there isn't a due date to answer that question, but our district is required to have a strategic plan in place. And we share that strategic plan with the Department of Education. We are required to report out on an annual report on how we've done meeting our goals in the fall of every year. We do a combined report with the World's Best Workforce and Achievement and Integration. That happens in October of each year. And so if you look at our next steps, really we need our school board goals, our district strategic plan, in order for us to really move forward and have those in place and have those solidified. This amazing group has given us some really good advice. And so now it's really up to us to move forward.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, seeing none. Thank you so much for coming tonight, and thank you so much for all the work that you put into this. You've given us a lot to chew on here, and we will do that. So thank you again. The next item on our agenda is the Clifton Larson Allen Auditor Engagement Letter, and that would be Dr. Tyne.
Good evening, Board Chair, Superintendent, Board Directors. It's that time of the year, and nothing adds more excitement to a board meeting than to review audit engagement letters. So I'm going to go through this real quick for you. The documents, you have two documents in your handout. One is the letter of engagement. The other is the agreement or the contract that basically sets out what's going to happen. It lays out the terms and the conditions, and it is based on an RFP that was issued last year, and the estimated fees are $48,720, and any extra and above for expenses are at $525 per hour. It lays out the responsibilities, and COVID is mentioned in there because it does have an effect on how things are reported. We have a sound relationship with the current auditor. It's their second year, Clifton Larson Allen. And Dennis Hogeveen will be our managing partner, and he'll be happy to attend any meeting. He will present to the board when the final audit does come in also. This is just a report, so there's no action necessary, but it will come back to you for final action at the next board meeting.
Okay, thank you very much. Are there questions? Okay, great. Thank you very much.
Too much excitement.
That was easy. We move on to the final of our reports for tonight, and that is the district handbook. Is that going to be Dr. Cherry?
That is me this evening. Thank you, Chair Petrie, Board Director, Superintendent Lansfeld. I am going to pinch hit for Carissa Keister this evening and just provide an update on our district handbook. Every fall, we're required to inform parents and guardians of district policies and required notices, as well as the rights and responsibilities of our students and their guardians. All of this information is included in the district handbook. The district handbook contains summaries of the various required notices, as well as an overview and links to the relevant school board approved policies. The handbook is published electronically and can be found on the district's website. Each fall, our parents and guardians are required to sign off that they have reviewed the policies, procedures, and required notices contained in the district policy handbook. Families receive multiple communications from their child's school, as well as in district communications directing them to the online handbook, and then they are required to sign off on the form that they've reviewed it. We're finalizing the handbook at this time, and we'll have a final version for your review and action at the July 22nd board meeting.
Okay, thank you very much. Are there any questions on this topic, the district handbook? Okay, great. That was easy too.
Thank
All
you.
right, we'll move on to our action items for tonight. The first item is the Read Well by third grade program. And Karen Lateral.
Good evening, everybody. Good evening, Chair Petrie, Superintendent Lansfeld, members of the board, directors, Assistant Superintendent Cherry. I'm Karen Lateral, and I'm here tonight to ask for approval on the Read Well by third grade plan that I reviewed with you 2 weeks ago.
And we did have a thorough presentation during our last board meeting. So I guess I would just ask if there are any questions. Director Sherman.
I don't have any questions. I would like to move to approve the district's Read Well by third grade plan.
Is there a second?
Yes, I'll second.
Director Hockert. Discussion? Director Weisberg.
Yes, I'm sorry. I kind of think I'm beating a dead horse saying this, but I just feel like I have to say it. I just have a hard time approving it with that really low goal for the third grade part of it. So that's the reason I can't support it. But, thank you.
Director Riley.
Thank you. Thanks. I feel the same. I also back in August, I had sent an email to Rachel Larson and Superintendent Lansfeld, and I believe you think you were on there too.
I was here yet.
Maybe. I think you were. We were discussing, I'm just really concerned because the board had asked or directed for letters PD to be put into this this program that was the stipulation for approval last time we did this, and it hasn't happened. And so I did bring that up in August, and I wanted to see that in this year, and it's not. And so, between the low goals and not having the letters PD in there, I can't support it because that was really the stipulation that we had last time, so.
Director Sherman.
Superintendent Lansfeld, my understanding is this is approving this plan is required in order to be compliant with state statute. If it does not get approved, is funding at risk? I mean, what are the consequences of not approving this plan?
Well, a lot of funding and resources for our students. It's, it's due by the end of this month?
June 30th.
June
yes.
30th. Yep.
June 30th. Is there funding at risk, specific funding do you know?
Yeah, yes. The funding is generated, the literacy funding incentive, and it's in a budget item, and you'll notice it's in your budget book right now. There are two ways that the revenue is generated. One, through proficiency aid on third graders, and that's $530 per student that meets the proficiency. And then there's a growth aid that's $530 per students in fourth grade on growth. And so that comes out to be about $340,000. Historically, it's been in that number, depending on the number of kids, et cetera. And the plan has to be submitted, and then the revenue follows.
Okay. So that's the funding we would lose, approximately $340,000. Okay. Thank you.
Director Porbeni.
Thank you, Chair Petrie. Karen, thank you. I do support the plan, but I also understand where Director Weisberg is coming from, and I know the last time she spoke. If this plan goes through, is there an opportunity for a review of the plan?
Yeah, we can still review it, can't we? Can we
Well-
submit an amendment?
We can submit the plan. Is this on?
Yes.
Yes.
Oh,
Yep.
okay. This is actually the first year that we've included the World's Best Workforce Plan in the Read Well by third grade plan. Because Read Well by third grade is a part of World's Best Workforce, I asked that we included it, that we would include it this year. In the past, I've been able to submit the plan without that specific goal in it. So yes, I do believe that we can come back and revise it. And it will be, I believe, more specific to the World's Best Workforce Plan.
Yeah, I mean, thank you for that. The reason I asked is I also really believe in challenging our kids and, you know, being able to compete, because when they leave here, they're competing with kids from all over the world. So having that challenge and really giving them opportunity to think above and beyond what their capabilities are is very important. And that's the reason why, although I support, so if we can have some kind of revision in the future, I think that would be great.
Thank you.
Director Sherman.
I really appreciated the report last week on this plan, and I had a couple of community members reach out to me and just appreciate the detail that was provided in terms of specifically the interventions and the way that that works. So I found it to be really comprehensive, and I understand the limitations of the pandemic related to some of the cuts in the professional development and why certain initiatives couldn't get done. So I don't want to jeopardize the $340,000 in funding that we would lose. I think that just only hurts student achievement. I'm not willing to do that. I think the plan is very comprehensive. I appreciate your work. I appreciate everything you did to bring this to the attention of the community and to the board. And so I will be supporting it tonight.
Thank you.
Director Hockert.
I'm pretty well in line with Director Sherman's comments right there. I also was thoroughly impressed with the report and from last time, and we have so many reading supports available to our students. It was really an education for me to understand what we all have available, and I do think that part of the challenges of the pandemic and funding has created an extra struggle this year, but I do definitely support this program and believe that we do need to continue to invest as much as we can in helping our kids get to proficiency. And we can continue conversations about letters going forward. At our presentation, sorry, last time, you did share with us that you were trying to make the letters program work. And the company itself actually kind of said, nope, we are not looking to adapt our program. So that kind of was a bit of a roadblock for us this year. But we do need to kind of continue that conversation, and I believe a good first step is moving forward with this plan.
Thank you.
Yeah, I guess I would just say that I also will be voting for this. I think everybody at this table would love to see a goal of more than 59%. I mean, we're not even breaking 60% there. But I also recognize that this is a relatively new literacy program anyway, and then it was sort of knocked off kilter by the pandemic. So I feel as though we need to get things back on track here, and you know, I mean, we could set a goal of 75%, but I mean, you know, is it really achievable? You know, we need to put these supports in place for students, and hopefully we'll exceed that goal and do even better going forward. But I would be reluctant to jeopardize a source of funding to vote against this, so that's why I will be voting for it. Director Sherman.
I would like to call the question if we've all spoken, unless I know Matt hasn't.
Matt was going to text me if he had a question.
Oh, okay.
I haven't seen anything yet. So yes, and we are at the point now where we can.
Right.
I think unless anybody has any other questions. Okay, all those in favor of the Read Well by third grade program, raise your hand, say aye.
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 All those opposed?
Nay.
Okay, the vote is 5-2, and it passes. Thank you.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you. All right, the next item on action items is OPEB levy. Dr. Tyne.
Again, good evening, and I'm going to present the OPEB, and there's going to be a sheet coming up in 1 minute on your screen. And I would like to make a clarification to earlier when I talked about alternative teacher compensation, which both of these are going to be handled back to back. I made a statement that there was a school district that did not contribute or was not taking part, and that was St. Paul. And that was rather misleading because they don't take part in the program at all. So of all the metro school districts, I just wanted to clarify, everybody does levy that amount except for Stillwater. Okay, all right. Okay. Oh, boy, that's kind of nice and small, but you have it in your packet, so I'll be able to read it, and we'll go from there. This is a combination of both the alternative teacher compensation and other post-employee benefits levies. The first one on the list is going to be the OPEB levy. And the OPEB levy is the amount that's used to pay for post-employee benefits. And in the past, our district has, there was a trust that was set up. And that trust, if you looked on your investments tonight and noticed, there's a separate set of investments for OPEB on that sheet. And the OPEB expenses have been charged, and there will be an adjustment against the trust. This past year, nothing was levied to support the OPEB. And the concern that I have, and I think others share that, would be that if we don't levy and give it some support, the trust is going to run out of money, and then it's going to come directly out of the general fund. This levy is available for us to use. We're recommending that the levy be set at, I think, 800, excuse me, I just want to make sure I get this right, at $800,000, okay? And that would cost the average homeowner $23 a year, all right? Now, the thing that I do want to mention to you that was not brought up before, I think maybe one of the board members brought it up, is that by approving this tonight doesn't mean you're locked in. It means that later on in December, when you make your final levy, if you decide not to levy this amount, you'll be able to make an adjustment. And in fact, last year, I think there was a board action to levy for $500,000, and then later on in December, the decision was made to not levy anything for OPEB. So what I would be recommending tonight for the school board is that they approve the levy for OPEB at $800,000 with the option available to the board to reduce that at a later date.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay. Is there a motion, Director Sherman?
I would like to make a motion to accept administration's recommendations and levy to that amount.
Is there a second? Director Porbaney. Okay, discussion. Director Riley.
When we met last time, you had mentioned that you might take a peek to see about how many years before, or how many people are left to sunset out. Did you get to do that?
I did take a look at that, and I do have the audits, but they're going to do a new one, and it's kind of outdated because we did have, the thing that frightens me a little bit is we had a large number of retirements this year, larger than normal. And I don't exactly know the age and of each of those and how many are going to be collecting benefits and how long. The benefits last until the age of Social Security, which is 65. And that's in the master agreement with the Teachers Association. So I don't know, but I do have some concerns that it might be larger than normal.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry. I did look at the line 191 in the And the payout is about, I think, $1.3 million right now that we've paid out this current year.
Okay.
Okay, other questions? Oh, actually, I'm sorry. Director Onken.
Actually, Director Riley asked my question, so I don't need to ask anymore.
Okay, thank you. All right, so if there are no further questions, we can take a vote on this. All those in favor of an OPEB levy of up to 800,000, raise your hand and say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Okay, that passes unanimously. And the next one is a discussion and a vote on the QComp levy.
Okay, QComp levy, there was a presentation earlier today, and I included a little bit of history. The district has always gone for the basic aid, and that's approximately about $1.4 million. There is a levy component that is available to the district at $91 per student times the population. And that changes a little bit with the population, and also that amount could be prorated or reduced by the state if there's not enough funding set aside. And that amount would be approximately about 825,000. I think I put, yep, 825,000. And that would cost the average homeowner $24 per year. Now, somebody asked a question earlier, and I think, Joan, if you could go to the last slide with the bar, what that would do to our standing as a district in comparison to taxes paid. We calculated the amount also including the Brookview addition and possible increases in OPEB and QComp levies, and we're still right where we, as of today, we would be at $1,177, and the average is $1,684, and that's provided by our financial consultant, Ellers. So are there any other questions that you may have?
Is there a motion on QComp levy? Director Hockert.
I'll move to take administration's recommendation for QComp.
Okay. Is there a second? Director Sherman, discussion. Director Weisberg.
Thank you. I have a harder time with this one, the post-employee benefits. That's something that taxpayers know what it is, and that's something that our teachers deserve. And if we're in danger, like you said, of, you're nervous about the trust running out, we can't let that happen. So I feel much differently about that. The QComp to me is, we're not asking taxpayers for a blank check. If we knew exactly what the money was going for, I might be a little more in favor of it. If we said, okay, we're going to try to get our pay for performance up to what other districts pay, but we don't know that. So to me, we've already added Brookview on without asking taxpayers. I was hoping that could be tied to a package in the future that would have something for every school, and we didn't ask, we just did it. This is going to be another thing we're not asking, we're just doing, and that makes me worry, so I can't support this.
Director Sherman.
I actually will be supporting this, and primarily because, and I appreciate your counsel through this, Dr. Tyne, that this is, again, just keeping the flexibility there, which I think with the pandemic and everything we've been hearing about, just in general in education right now, it's uncertain, and I think that flexibility is important to keep. We can always revisit it. I also felt really good about the QComp presentation today, and that I keep hearing, even through our World's Best Workforce and through our through the community members that spoke tonight, PD kept coming up and how critical it is for literacy and for student achievement. And so I look at QComp and I say, this is something that is, our students deserve it. our students deserve this money so that we can really elevate the achievement in our schools. So I guess I just want to keep it open. I want the QComp board, administration, staff to come back to a future meeting and really show us what that $800,000 can do for our students. And so for that opportunity to see what that funding can do for our students, at this point, I'm comfortable keeping it open to seeing what that does. So that's how I'll be voting tonight.
Director Hockert.
Thank you, Chair Petrie. I too am interested in keeping the option open by supporting the additional levy for this funding. As Director Sherman just mentioned, the PD just kept coming up in multiple ways tonight. And I recalled a conversation I had with one of our administrators who was talking about how important it is in teachers needing to, particularly with new curriculum as it comes out, to really dive into PD in order to more effectively and efficiently teach our students in the best practices available, and that is really, and along with that, aligning with the state and local standards. So that really becomes a pathway to increasing our achievement. And we've heard multiple times tonight how important it is for our district to push our goals and to really push to have high-achieving students and staff. And I believe that taking an opportunity to invest in professional development is furthering one of those goals.
Director Riley.
Thanks. As I stated before, I have a hard time taking money from the taxpayer without asking when they aren't represented in the decision-making of what happens with those dollars. The school board is not part of QComp and the QComp board, and they make the decisions on their own. I mean, I've tried to attend QComp meetings in the past, and I've had meetings canceled because of my attendance. So just in my purpose there was to learn and understand more back when I had started being on the board. So I just have a hard time because, like I said, the community isn't represented in the decisions of how those dollars are spent.
Dr. Tyne.
Could I add one more thing? This too, the board has two more bites of the apple, you could say. Once in September when the initial levy comes out. And at that time, I would recommend that you levy the max to get out to December. Then you have another chance to lower it, but you can't increase it, okay, in December. Just wanted to remind you of that.
I also will be voting to keep our options open. After seeing that presentation tonight on professional development, I too was very impressed with the kinds of opportunities that teachers are getting through professional development, especially the embedded types. Nobody is born to be a good teacher, just as no one is born to be a perfect worker. I mean, we get training to become the best we can be. And I think that we owe it to our teachers to provide the kinds of opportunities that they need to become the best kind of person in front of that classroom. Because we know that probably has greater impact on students and their achievement than pretty much anything else we do. So, I mean, this vote gives us the opportunity to levy to support that. And, we may or may not follow through. I mean, we don't know. I mean, we're voting right now to leave our options open. And so that's what I will be doing as well. Are there any other questions or comments? Okay. So all those in favor of a levy of up to $825,000 for QComp, raise your hand and say aye.
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 Those opposed?
Nay.
Nay.
Okay, 5-2 vote, that passes. And then we go to the preliminary budget with Dr.
Okay.
Tyne.
Thank you once again. Good evening. And there'll be some information. I know that we've had one run at this already. And I guess before I start, and usually I forget to do this, having a gift, not expressing gratitude is like having a gift and not opening it. So I want to say a tone of gratitude to my small team that I work with, which is Linda, Lynn, and our new Mary band member, Mackenzie, but also to our principals and other administrators who've really helped develop this budget. Now, one of the things that I want to just touch base on is what's not in here. So you kind of can get a little foothold. First of all, earlier this year, I put together some budget assumptions, and on those assumptions, the budget was built, along with many, many other hands, and then also a timeline. And we're one board meeting late from approving it, but I'm hoping that'll happen tonight because we need to have a budget approved by June 30th so that we can operate in the new fiscal year. One other thing I want to just touch base on, our superintendent has put together a plan to bring kids back to school, and I believe it's on the wheel, right? And that's really the information that's out there for public on how we're going to use our COVID money and what we're going to do to get kids back in the classroom and make sure that we start on time. We encourage public input on that document, and that's available on I think on our webpage, isn't it? And so that please feel free if you're a public or a citizen in Stillwater School District, or not, I guess, it's America, to please submit it. Now, the governor also just passed or worked with the legislature to, I believe it passed today, and our per pupil funding is not included in this budget. Just to give you a rule of thumb, it's an estimate of about $1.5 million for the next year. So that's good news, and that of course depends on population and how many kids we have that show up. And the CARES money, SR2, the $251,000 for the partnership and also SR3 is not included in that. And those are going to be significant dollars that we'll bring back to you as we adjust the budget. And we're going to be coming back to you in fall. And last year that didn't happen because of personnel issues, to bring back and update the budget so you'll have a much better picture before you have to make some decisions later on down the road. So what I have for you tonight on the next slide is a pie chart that shows where our revenue comes from. And I don't believe it's going to be a big surprise to you that 56% or almost 60% of our budget comes from state aid. And then federal aid is a small amount, but you have to remember that that's going to be increasing when we come back to you because of COVID funding. And 29% is property tax. That figure also includes the referendum dollars, which we're going to be going out for a vote this year, just so everybody's aware of that. That would be a big change. Also on this page, you'll see a list of expenditures broken down, and you'll notice that about 73% of the district expenditures go for benefits and salaries. And this slide or this wheel graph shows both all funds and all object codes too. So it's not exactly just the general fund. On the other document on the other side, it shows a projection on the projected fund balance as of June 30th, 2021, and then the revenue budget for the next upcoming year and the expenditure. And there's going to be a spend down of our general fund. And the reason that our expenditures, of course, are a little bit high, I don't think that's a surprise to you, is because of we settled the contract a little bit later this year than we normally would. Food service is in good shape, really. I'm really amazed. And we're also applying for some additional funding, another grant that's available that our food service folks are doing, and also the general fund will benefit from that also. Community service fund is is an estimate, and rather than try to put a guess and make too many changes in it, because there are some discussions that still have to happen on how many, what's the revenue for the last part of the year, how much is going to have to be moved back on some funding and fees that are recovered. And also, we've applied for an ESSER 2 has been submitted, and there's a significant amount that's set aside for community ed in there. So I'm leaving it the way it is stated there. Those are the total of the operating funds. And then we have the building construction fund and the debt service fund. And then there's the trust funds. And overall, this is a big business, and you have to realize that we're spending close to $140 million. And when the federal funds and the new funding come in, it will be in excess of that. On the last document is a breakdown of the summary of revenues by source, category, and fund, and they're listed on that page. Gives percentages and shows the 19-20 actual, the 2021 revenue budget, and then the preliminary budget for this year and the amounts. We look to the general fund balance. It's an estimate to be about 5.7 at the end of this year, and at the end of next year, pretty much about the same thing, about 5.4. Now, one thing I do want to mention, this is revenue and expenditures, by the way. I do want to mention that we don't have a crystal ball. Somebody asked me, I think one of the board members asked me, he said, you know, what's your job? And I think I flippantly said I'm a professional guesser. And what I do is I try to guess on what's going to happen and what people are going to do and who's going to have kids and how many people are going to retire and who's going to get graduate degrees, and all those things enter in and affect what we have for revenue and expenditure. So this is a document that I think a lot of people have had input in. I hope they feel comfortable with it. I think it's as good a job as we can do under the conditions that we have. So I hope that you'll support this document and at least get us off to a good start for the next fiscal year.
So thank you, Dr. Tyne, and your whole team for all the work that goes into this, and I know there's a ton of it. So, you know, we really appreciate that. It's a lot of work, so.
Thank you.
Thank you. Is there a motion? Director Hackert.
Sure, I'll move to approve this year's budget.
Okay, is there a second? Director Sherman, any discussion? Director Riley.
So in the preliminary budget fund detail, we have not met the 5% unassigned fund balance goal.
No.
Does that 1.5 million that you just spoke about impact that or not?
Well, it kind of depends what we do in the next fiscal year. Yes, I think it would, because I did not include in the assumptions any settlement, okay? And I also did not include any state revenue. Now, there is additional revenue in also special education to make up a little bit. And the per pupil unit is significant. It's $1.5 million. That's cash and fluid influx.
So for me, it's really important that we meet that, and we haven't. And you and I talked about it a little bit about where I'm at. I struggle that we haven't met those goals. And I also, with the settlement of the teachers' contracts, it's up 1.9, almost $2 million above where initial parameters were. So that when we initially started negotiations, all of this was in mind. COVID, all of the unknown going forward was considered at that time when we were doing this. So I'm having a hard time right now with those things not being met. So.
I should mention to Director Riley that the COVID funding is not included in there either. And that the SR3 is 1.9 million. The SR2 is 875,000. And then there's 250,000 that we're using for partnerships. And there may be more.
So we will meet our fund balance, or,
I'm gonna just stick.
come on, John.
Throw me a bone, right? I'm sorry.
He's a guesser.
I don't want to write a check with my mouth that I can't back up. Okay? So, I'd say when you're dealing with numbers like this, it can fluctuate one way or another pretty easily, And right now, I'll tell you what the biggest issue for me is personally about doing that is the number of kids that we're going to be serving.
Yeah.
And what did we lose this year and what are we going to have next year? And next year is, I think we put our best people on that, right? Right? That's our best guy right there. And so we think we've got a pretty good handle on that, but it's this past year. Because when the auditors come in, what they're gonna do is they're gonna look and say, let me see, you're down 250 kids, the per pupil unit for those kids is this, and that's coming right off the top of the revenue. So even if we get it, they're gonna make an adjustment to take it away. So that's why I'm a little hesitant.
Okay,
Sorry.
no, thanks for your honesty.
Anything else? Any other questions? Okay, all those in favor of?
Oh, do we have a motion? Yes, we did.
Yeah,
Sorry.
we did, yeah.
Yep.
All those in favor of approving this preliminary budget for the coming year, raise your hand and say aye.
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 Those opposed?
Nay.
Okay, motion passes 6-1. All right, the final item on our agenda tonight is the long-term facility maintenance plan for fiscal year 2023.
Good evening, Chair Petrie, members of the board. This action item is to approve the long-term facility and maintenance 10-year plan. There are 4 documents that are required as part of the long-term facility and maintenance application. They're the long-term facility and maintenance revenue, 10-year expenditure, the long-term facility revenue projection, the statement of assurances, and then the school board resolution. So all of these documents are in your packet. To qualify for the 2022 payable property tax levy, the 2023 10-year plan must be adopted and then submitted to the Board of Education. So at the last meeting, there was a list of projects for fiscal year 23, which is really next summer's projects. The number for today is $8,143,416. If you go back to last meeting, that is up $15,416. The reason it's up $15,000 is because of the approval of the 916 long-term facility projects that we approved last meeting. That got rolled into this number. So if you want to know the difference of why it's up $15,000, it's because of that 916 number in there. So with that, there is a resolution that has to be read. So if the clerk could do that.
All right. Thank you very much. So extract of the minutes of meeting of School Board of Independent School Districts 834, State of Minnesota. Pursuant to due call and notice thereof, a regular meeting of School Board of Independent School District number 834, State of Minnesota, was held on June 24th, 2021 at 8:24 p.m. for the purpose and part of approving the Stillwater Area Public School District number 834's long-term facility maintenance revenue 10-year plan. Member, I think that was
Parmini.
Oh, sorry. So, Member Pobeni introduced the following resolution and moved its adoption. Resolution approving Stillwater Area Public School District number 834's long-term facility maintenance revenue 10-year plan. Be it resolved by the School Board of Independent School District number 834, State of Minnesota as follows. The School Board of Stillwater Area Public School District number 834 has approved the long-term facility maintenance revenue 10-year plan for its facilities for the 2022-2023 school year in the amount of $8,143,416. The various components of this program budget are attached as Exhibit A hereto and are incorporated herein by reference Said budget is hereby approved. The motion for the adoption of the foregoing resolution was duly seconded by Member
Hockert.
Harkett. And upon vote being taken thereon, the following voted in favor thereof, and the following voted,
Okay, so all those in favor of the long-term facilities maintenance plan, raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
Oh, sorry, I did that wrong. This needs to be a roll call vote, so we will go to Joan on this.
Director Hockert,
Yes.
Director Onken,
Yes.
Director Porbeni,
yes.
Director Riley,
Yes.
Director Sherman,
Yes.
Director Weisberg,
Yes.
Chair Petrie.
Yes.
We have a 7-0 vote.
Okay, I don't think we need to read the rest of it, do we?
No.
No.
We're
So,
good,
we're
okay.
good, we're good.
Perfect, thank you.
Okay, that concludes our action items for tonight. I have nothing for the board chair report, so this meeting is adjourned.